Good evening, and welcome to this, the February 2019 meeting of the Oregon Country Fair Board of Directors. It is 156 days until the Country Fair. I'm Sam. I'll be your tour guide this evening. Tonight we'll have our standard agenda, beginning with new business, and then we'll have a time for announcements, a time for staff reports and committee reports, a time for member input, a report from our treasurers. Then there'll be old business, approving the minutes from the last board meeting, appointing Kelly Dunn as co-coordinator to Fair Central Crew, appointing Sue Theola to the Food Committee, item of business about the Personnel Policy Committee, an item of business about the OCF guidelines, item of business about member input in all committee business, and an item of business about time for conversation between membership and the board. And then we'll close, as always, with the President's speech. Thank you all for your patience this evening. I suggest that the board approve a budget next year for a karaoke machine for meetings that have an executive session beforehand so we can entertain ourselves while we meet. Without further ado, let's move into new business. Are there items of new business? We'll go with Peaches first.
Yeah, I'd like to put up board committee best practices.
Board committee best practices. John?
I'd like to put up revisions to ED job description. It might continue to leave that from new business to old business.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? George? So John moves and George seconds to move the revisions to ED job description to old business. Is there member input on that question?
You want to move something that you just said from new business to old business,
Yes.
so it's acted on tonight
Could
without
be, yes.
any introduction or reflection by the Fair family. Is that correct?
Well, so we don't ask questions and input, but you can ask a question and it can
okay.
go in the air. Crystalline?
Can I provide some clarity? This is just whether or not it would get voted on tonight. I'm sure they'll give us more details on what exactly it is they're voting on when it gets to that.
The question right now is just simply, can it be discussed and then decided tonight? There'll be a time for member input.
Yeah.
Okay. Without other member input, we'll move to board discussion. Erin?
Oh, I'm sorry, never mind. Not
Okay,
yet.
I will
I'm on new
recognize you
business.
for other new business,
Okay.
but do we want to we're discussing John's motion
That's
to
fine.
move this. Others? John?
Just a little bit of information. Our consultant for the executive director search has made some suggestions for clarifying some language and feels that we should make those changes before we post the position. And that hence the need to act on it tonight.
Other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving this item to old business? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wait a minute, there's more than 10 people voting. Everyone voted in favor, none opposed. Okay, other items of new business. Erin?
Okay, I've been talking a lot about member input into decision-making in a fair, and I've been talking about it for months. And John very kindly put something up at the last meeting, a little bit about member involvement. But I'm going to go ahead and put forward a motion in a draft, fully formed, in other words, I'm up for changes, presentation so that you have a month to get me input about it, because it's really about you. It's about how you're going to be able to communicate with our committees, our task force, our decision-making bodies. And so I think it's very important that we get information from you as to what you want. So for new business under membership involvement policy, what I have, and I'm going to read it out, and I will give Kimo a copy, and I definitely want your input, okay? We need to talk about this. So what I have is membership involvement policy. The purpose, this is not part of the motion. Okay, I'm just going to give you a purpose. The purpose is to provide avenues of information exchange directly between the bodies involved in the decision-making processes and the membership while protecting the privacy of each member's contact information. Sorry, I'm still running from trying not to be late here. So the membership involvement policy says, it is an Oregon Country Fair policy that decision-making bodies, including but not limited to committees, task forces, the board, and management groups, solicit input from the membership throughout the phases of development of ideas and processes whenever time allows and the subjects are not confidential. To support this effort, the board directs staff to assist these bodies by using the most current technology available to directly contact the membership through our current membership structures regarding topics under discussion. This outreach is in addition to invitations to meetings, announcement in the Fair Family News, and minutes. So the ideas are that when something comes up, you will be sent a blast by whatever technology we have available.
Up before personnel policy committee.
Okay, we'll do that too. Okay. Other adjustments? Okay, hearing none, it's now time for announcements.
Well, no,
sorry.
I thought you meant adjustments to the thing. I do have some new
Do you have
business.
another item of new business?
Yeah, I had a motion that was tabled, but I didn't catch it. It wasn't on the agenda, and so I'm just going to kind of refine it here because I've amended it some. The title of this is Coordinator Policies and Procedures. Direct management to work with the Coordinator Resource Group in development and recommendations for volunteer policies, including but not limited to expectations, basic roles and responsibilities, and scope of authority of coordinators, appointment and dismissal protocol, including disciplinary expectations.
And that's item of business that you had previously proposed, but then was tabled?
Yeah, and I've amended it
Okay.
some. I took it quite down, so I'm fine with it as new business.
So you're
they
just
can,
resubmitting it as new business?
yes,
Okay.
in a
Is there
amended
like
format.
a
Yeah.
couple of words I can put down? here?
Yes, coordinator policies. We'll just do coordinator policies.
Okay.
And processes.
I was going to say and procedures, but then
Procedures.
And procedures?
Crystalline
Okay.
said because that might be more.
I don't think she wants that
It's
word.
fine. It's fine. Just leave it up there.
What's that?
It's fine. Leave it just like it is.
Okay, cool. Other new business?
I was trying to.
A question?
Was anyone going to put on new business appointing that person to the Savannah Data Movement team?
Sure, I'll put that on.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. And it's, who's that person?
Breeze Palestinian.
Okay.
Co-coordinator. Who is it for?
Coordinator to.
Vanity movement.
Oh, yeah, I left it. Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You can dig through this.
Okay. Other new business? No? And now we move into announcements. This is the time for brief announcements about events, things upcoming, whatnot. Lily.
On March 2nd and 3rd, Cedar and the folks with the grievance process are hosting a conflict skill building retreat at Alice's. All day Saturday and Sunday. They'll have a party on Saturday night, a potluck. And then that retreat will be followed by an arbitrator training on Sunday afternoon at 3. Those are two separate events. They're open to everyone. Anyone who'd like to come learn a little bit more about conflict resolution, mediation, and arbitration is welcome at those two events. If you have any questions, I don't have with me the contact information that they want you to use for Cedar or for the grievance process to find out about this. You can email me at lilyclearwater@gmail.com and I will send your questions on to them. We hope to see you there.
You know what time it starts?
It starts Saturday morning at 9, and they may be inviting people to come on Friday night, but I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. Other announcements, Jane?
I had a question.
Please.
I had that the arbitrator training was from 1 to 4. Has it been moved?
On Sunday,
Yeah.
you know, I thought it was at 3, but maybe I should clarify that for the minutes. If you got that from Kat, then I think you're probably more right than I am.
Okay.
Unless I
Bill, and then we'll go to
Thank you. Let me introduce myself. I'm Bill Tuner. I'm the publisher of the Daily Emerald, and that's University of Oregon's campus newspaper. And if you're not familiar with it, we're an independent student-run media organization. And the reason I'm here, and I hope I'm following protocol, but I want to propose a partnership between the Emerald and the Country Fair to produce a hardbound book for the fair's 50th anniversary. I know that there is not a budget available. I know that resources aren't available, and I'm not asking for budget or resources. In fact, I'm looking at just the opposite. With the University of Oregon student newspaper, we have the expertise, we have the writers, we have the designers, and we also have the marketers to ensure a quality book, a quality product that could bring in revenue and publicity for both organizations. And you might ask, you know, what's in it for us, or why would we be interested in this? As you know, newspapers are struggling these days, and we're looking at other ways to generate revenue other than print. And that profit and loss statement is that if we partner together, I think that we could produce a hardbound quality book that we could sell probably 3,000 books, and we could work out an arrangement where the country fair would get profits and we would get profits. Any profits that we would get, I can guarantee, would go into sustaining the Emerald. And if we sold 3,000 books and we're willing to do all the work and all the marketing and buy all the books and take all the chances, we'd be looking at providing the country fair with 25% of the profits, and we would take 75% of the profits. If we sold 3,000 books, it would be 12,000 for the country fair. It would be 37,000 for us. We'd certainly negotiate that point. So this is my proposal. Unfortunately, it's a tight timeline because if we were to do this, we need to start in February, and that would be us working with a coordinator or liaison, I should say, from the country fair. Because this isn't our book, okay? It's not our book, it's your book. And you have complete oversight.
We got to,
No problem. So is there any opportunity to give me direction? John?
If we put on a new business partnership with Daily Emerald, and I'd like to move that from new to old.
okay. So, John,
We
is
can
there a
at
second?
least discuss it and decide what we want to do with it.
Is there a second to move that from new business to old business for tonight? Laurel? Okay. Brief time for member input. I don't see some thumbs. John?
Well, I was having an announcement.
Oh, we'll come back to that. That's on hold. We're just doing this motion to move that to old business and then we'll
I
come back
see.
to announcement. So, yeah?
U of O journalism graduate class of 78.
Right on. All right. Is there more discussion on that motion? Okay. All those in favor of moving, partnering with the Oregon Daily Emerald on a book to old business? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that moves to old business as well. And now we go back to member input, or no, announcements. Sorry, John. Announcements.
Hi. I know I announced this at the last meeting, but I want to clarify it a little bit. On April 3rd is the Wow Hall's annual general membership meeting. It's been moved up a little bit from where it normally is, so that some new energy can come in right away. And if you would like to run for the board, you need to be a member or have your membership re-up by March 3rd, 30 days in advance. But you can register to vote all the way up until the meeting. That's my
Thanks, John. Yaman.
Yamans. All right. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm Guitar Man Pete and all that shit. So I wanted to thank everybody for helping me with my birthday benefit for the Egan Warming Center. We had almost 300 people. John and Judy Silvermoon were there, Palmer and Paxton, Jamie and his brother Red, and Auntie M collected money and counted it, and I think John Pincus, you helped count money there and stuff. So we had almost 300 people, raised $900, and last week in the woods and swamps of where I'm from, it was 26 below zero, it was 12 below as a high, and Yaman to the warming centers. I remember Jamaica, and I go, oh, I just wear more clothes. Anyway, thank you all. I'm going to do more benefits because it's kind of fun to do, and if you know any good beneficiaries of benefits, let me know. So Yamans and Yamams, thank you all a lot, because it's cold out there in places. That's why Jamaica, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Tom.
Firecat Tom.
Firecat Tom.
Right. So the coordinators of the country fair have been working together. We have 10 people that have put their name in the hat to be our representatives. We've been working towards getting a timeline for terms of those people and a mission statement for them. And we're also going to be putting this out to SurveyMonkey to finalize it. And we haven't determined when we're going to do that yet, but that's where we're at with that.
And I'm going to announce something I completely forgot to announce at the beginning. We are live on the internet, so everything you're saying here, you're saying to a handful of people on the internet. So thank you, internet team. And we've got an awesome new camera operator who's doing awesome work on that. Okay, Dick.
Well, so to tag on to Tom saying just a little bit about what we've done so far, there was a huge email discussion about how to pick the group, and from that, Chrysalin agreed to have the coordinators pick the representatives for the group. We created a forum on the internet because the email conversation was difficult for some people to participate in, and it was hard to follow and it wasn't lasting. Though we still solicited repeatedly for participation through email to try and reach all of the coordinators. We got an official list from the office, which by our count left, at the time, 146 coordinators. In a week and a half, we were able to bring 88 coordinators into the forum, more than half of them. After much dialogue, we posed 3 questions to be sent to all coordinators. That's the SurveyMonkey part. And so on selecting the group of volunteers to be put forth as the membership of the first coordinator group, that vote came out within the forum. Within the forum we had 56 people participate, or 64%. And 84% of them voted yes on the group of people that we were putting forth. On the terms of service, 95% of the people voted yes. And on the method of operation of responsibility for the group, 96% of the people voted yes. So that's how that came out.
Jane?
Since Cecile is not here, I want to remind you one more time that our bingo will be Sunday the 10th from 4 to 7. Get to pick out fabulous crafts and support crafters who don't have medical insurance.
Where?
I wrote it down because I was sure I'd remember.
Sam
Bond's Brewery.
Not Sam Bond's Garage.
Brewery. By the courthouse, not
By
on
the
Blair.
courthouse. The Sam Bond's has 2 locations now. So, I know, right? It's by the new federal courthouse. Okay, yeah, Laura.
No offense to anyone here, but there's freezing conditions out there and ice, and I live 2 hours away plus, so I might have to cut out around 9:30 to 10 to make it home safely. So I just wanted to give everyone a heads up.
Let's try to finish by then.
I hope we're done by then, but you know how it goes.
Yeah, let's just speak.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, other? Okay, let's go on to staff reports. Crystal, you want to lead off?
Sure. First, a little bit of, well, some really sad news. Mayor Larson from the city of Veneta, she had been a huge advocate for the fair and a very large partner of ours, as well as within the community, passed away in early January. This is a huge loss for the area of Veneta and us, and just she was just a really amazing, fun woman and really an incredible leader. So my heart goes out to her family, and some other sad news. Stephen Durkles resigned as a coordinator from construction crew, so I just want to give him a huge, very public thank you for all of his work. And he will still be participating in the fair. I made sure about that when I got his letter. But I just also wanted to give him a very public thank you for all of his work on construction crew. Tom and Fire Dick did offer some CRG update. Most of the proposal that we put out to the coordinators regarding the structure of the CRG and some of their initial priorities and what to do is received really, really well. I'd like to give a big thank you to the coordinators who really helped create that proposal. We had a big giant meeting about it in December, and then kind of a couple different coordinators really took the lead on creating, putting it down on paper, and I want to thank them quite a bit. We did, as I say, receive a lot of feedback on how the original group would be chosen. Due to that feedback, the management team handed it over to coordinators to figure out. Since then, we have received several coordinators express concern over how it's working out and feeling fear about speaking their opinion. I hope that this can change so that all coordinators are able to be heard and adequately represented in this advisory group. Stephanie will talk more about this, but there was some proposed changes to lane code around campgrounds. Shane and Stephanie did an outstanding job in gathering the neighborhood campgrounds that surround OCF. And we were really able to show our ability to work together as a community, and because of that, the county commissioners, the proposed changes died for even lack of a motion, because they saw that we're going to try to work together and address a lot of their concerns on our own. And Shane and Stephanie deserve a huge thanks for that. And then just on a little bit more of a personal note, after our last board meeting, I got the flu really bad. It seemed like within a few days of getting over that, I've been going through some other personal stuff. I apologize that many emails and phone calls have gone unanswered, and I hope to get caught up as soon as possible. That's all I got.
Hi, I'm going to start, there's many things to talk about tonight, but I'll start with, just recently, Crystal and I had a meeting out at Alice's with fire crew. Tom, Dick, and Henry was there. But he's not here today, or Bill Pack. Members of the lump committee, Dennis Todd, Doug with Vegmanics, DJ was there. We talked about prescribed burning on the fair site. We had Tom Watershed, Kendrick, an ecologist. We had members from the Nature Conservancy, Amanda Rao, who's also a fire manager and chair of the Oregon Prescribed Fire Council. We talked extensively for about 2.5 hours about reducing the fire load on the fair site, what prescribed burning does for the environment here in the Willamette Valley, and how the practice has been used for generations before us. We saw lots of slides where they are actually actively doing it in various areas around the Willamette Valley and in and out of Eugene. And so we are now actively having more meetings to talk about messaging to the membership, trying to identify a place to do a trial basis, and the trial basis is actually 3 controlled burns. After 3 times in the same area, you actually see some real benefits, and what it does is make the wildflowers more vibrant. It helps the oak savanna and the ash savanna in the Willamette Valley. And so I know that it sounds like I want to burn down the fair, but I really don't. And I knew that that would be the first thing somebody posted on Facebook, so I decided to come to you now and tell you that we're not actually wanting to burn down the fair. But it's an interesting concept, and I think it would be very beneficial for our 500 acres, or some of our 500 acres. Secondly, the permitting team, the architects, the volunteer architects have been coming out to the fair site. They're still collecting data on fasteners, and some of them are now in various different areas of the fair, collecting the booth data, doing design draws, and so on and so forth. We're very close to a package submittal. I wanted to thank Kirk Schultz for helping shepherd some of these people forward and helping them understand fasteners, because they're architects. They don't know about timber locks and bolts and other fasteners. So it's really wonderful to see, and hopefully that'll be soon. I've been searching without any luck for an engineering company or a testing company to come out and do the helical piers on the dance pavilion. With no luck. There's nobody in the Portland area, there's nobody in Southern Oregon, there's nobody in Eugene that does it. So I'm thinking about purchasing a dynamometer, say that 3 times fast, which will actually, we can use it to do the testing as long as we have an engineer there. We are working with an engineer who did the first round of calculations on the structure itself. And then we'll be submitting that for permitting to the county here really soon. The road vacation is slowly moving along. I had a recent discussion with our neighbor today. I think that by the middle of this month, we'll have something into the county, and that process should be done before the fair this year. As Chrislyn mentioned earlier, We succeeded at the county commissioners level because they were changing the county camping ordinances, 18-11, which would have had a dramatic effect not only to the fair, but the surrounding campgrounds around us. And, Crystal and I started working on that project back in October, and it came to a head just, last Tuesday, I think it was. And I wanted to say thank you for Stephanie for helping organize the campgrounds, and Heather and Robert McCarthy for helping us make connections with our surrounding neighbors. We'll be moving forward with the surrounding neighbors and their campgrounds, collaboratively creating a process in which some of the concerns that the county had and emergency officials had about ingress and egress and traffic and noise issues, with the hope that the county commissioners and the county won't come back and want to make this change next year or the year down the line. So Stephanie just sent an email. We'll be meeting with them again, and then we'll be bringing all of us together with LCSL, OFA, ODF, Lane County Health, to discuss how to remedy some of their perceived issues surrounding camping. And one of the final last things I wanted to say was that we hired a temporary employee from Staffing Partners. He's worked for a couple of weeks. He's doing a fantastic job. Jeff's pretty happy with him. He's a quick learner. He has a great attention to detail, and he's very motivated, and so that's been pleasant. And seeing Jeff in a really great mood is great. The three of us are continuing to meet with the recycling to talk about our compost process and our program, and working with Ann Rogers to change or to have our soil tested over at the winery to see if it's actually identified as high-value soil or if it can be redesignated. That may help us with some future processes and operations at the fair site. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Yeah.
Sorry, Stephanie. I apologize. I didn't see. John's got a question.
Actually, I just wanted to express my thanks to you and Stephanie for the work you did on mobilizing the neighboring campgrounds and heading off the adoption of an ordinance that would have had some implications for us. Just wanted to express my appreciation for that.
Diane?
And I want to add, I want to thank you guys so much, and Massman and Heather too. I was so impressed at that hearing. You guys really did us good.
Thank you.
Ditto, I'd like to say the same thing. I was there. It's one of the most impressive county commission meetings I've ever gone to. We were very well organized, and by far better organized than anybody else that showed up there. It really paid off. Yeah. Thank you.
Sam, I had one last thing.
Shane, go ahead.
Mayor Larson's memorial is
Sunday, this coming Sunday the 10th.
This Sunday, yeah, on, I'm going to look through my notes here.
At 1 o'clock.
At 1 o'clock at the Fern Ridge Middle School at 88831 Territorial Road, for anyone that wants to attend.
1 o'clock, which day?
But Sunday the 10th.
At Fern Ridge Middle
Sunday the
School.
10th.
Okay, thank you. All right, Stephanie. Sorry.
Memorize that because our camping meeting we set up right before that, so we wouldn't have to make 2 trips to Bonita. So yes, we do have another meeting with the campgrounds planned. As I told many people after that county commissioner meeting, our work is just now beginning. We actually really do have to address our common issues, and one of them is traffic on Subtle. So we'll just start saying it now, and maybe if we say it enough, people will hear it. If you're entering the fair from Subtle Road, go up 126 to the far west end of Subtle, come down, and enter on taking a right into the fair property. But the other thing we're trying to do is work with ODOT to get Maple Gate open on Thursday, because that's the day that all the fairgrounds or all the campgrounds load in. So if we could move some of our traffic to 126, it would make a big impact on our neighbors over there. Shortly after our January board meeting, I went to a meeting of the Oregon, I'm sorry, I don't have their name on, the Oregon Cultural
Trust.
Trust, yes. And we were voted by their board to be honored with the title of Oregon Heritage Tradition. And it is for organizations that have been around 50 years or longer, and so we're in good company with like the Pendleton Roundup and the Rose Festival and other festivals. So you'll be seeing a little bit of hype around that coming up. Then that also, one of the things we are starting in on kind of publicity efforts for the year. Carrie, our social media person, has been doing really well. If you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, you're seeing a lot of posts about, entertainment applications and crash applications. But Pat, who works with us through Vox Media, has actually already started reaching out to some of the bigger publications like the Washington Post and Rolling Stone about our 50th coming up. So there's some exciting things that could happen. Let's see. The other thing, one of the things I've been working on in addition to budgets, is Cliff from the IT crew has been talking to Spectrum about maybe getting fiber internet service at the site, which would really increase the internet speed and accessibility over there. So fingers crossed that that is something that we can get done and comes in within our budget. That's what I got.
Thank you. Mary?
I got to observe and help out with my first budget process. So it was really great to close the loop on that whole cycle. A lot of hard work went into this budget process. And I guess, did all coordinators receive budgets now?
No, we're still doing some fine tuning after the financial updates you'll hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Endowment apps are in, and the committee will be making decisions this week on that. And we do have Sean in the house recording live. Thank you, Sean, for all of your help. It's great to have you. Yeah, and the office is just super heating up. There's lots of excitement for the 50th, so that's awesome. And then if you are a new coordinator, can you please contact me and let me know your info for the contact sheets so that we can make sure we keep, with the CRG meetings that have been happening, we've been getting lots of information about bad contact info on those sheets. So we're getting a really good list together now. So please keep me informed of your contact info. Thank you.
Robin?
Well, I just want to stand because I'm back from my sabbatical. And I want to thank this organization truly for such an incredible employee benefit. It's deep. It goes really deep. I was, although I was not able to get out of town as I had planned, unfortunately, because my mom is in more fragile health than I thought she was. She's 88 and she's beginning to, have issues. But I was able to meet my goals that I set out to meet, and I feel I'm coming back with things to enhance my role at FAIR. And I feel that the timing of this was like beyond perfect because of my mother's health. And so I really mostly want to thank this organization for seeing the value in this and the timing of the big hand that gave me this quality time with my mom that I will never ever regret. So that really touched me a lot to be able to do that, so thank you. I want to thank my coworkers for keeping the wheels turning, the things that I could not do. I really mean it. Thank you so much. I was able to get in and check into email and also get in for critical little pieces, but it was I really appreciate it, so thank you. And so back at it, the stuff is happening. The 50th, boy, I could feel the energy is just beginning to just crackle. When it comes to Culture Jam, I'm already setting, key pieces in place. Already met with my kitchen team, the whole thing, getting leads in place. And I wanted to say a very exciting thing. There's a Culture Jam partners with an organization called Peace Jam that many of you have probably heard about. They are having a conference, their fourth conference in partnership with the University of Oregon. It's a regional conference for Peace Jam where they bring together Nobel Peace Laureates with young people. and the Nobel Peace Laureate gets to spend a whole weekend with teenagers who get to learn and share their projects with the laureate, and the laureate gets to teach about peace. And there's a woman named Lima Bowie coming this year, and she's from Liberia, and she got her Peace Prize in 2000, I believe it was 2006, after literally pulling together a peace movement in Liberia during a very violent civil war. She reached out to women from Christian and Muslim women across religious lines, and with their peace movement, they actually brought an end to the Civil War. She's an amazing individual. So Culture Jam is offering 10 full scholarships to any youth who is between, it goes to 8th grade to 12th grade. So if you know of anyone, any young person, please send them to me. It's an incredible thing. And there's even a half-day program with Lima for 4th and 5th graders. So if you know 4th and 5th graders, the event's happening the 16th and 17th of February, and I just feel very proud to be able to make these scholarships available. And I think that's it. I just really have a lot of gratitude to all of you and to this organization for all your support for the time away I was able to take. So.
Thank you.
Okay, committee reports. Paxton, go first.
This is a little complicated one here, just a second. It's bylaws and election committee joint meeting report. There's actually an extensive written report that's come out of this. Heidi wanted me to read it, but it turns out all I have is draft 2 and it's not the final one. So I'm going to summarize it and say to go to the Fair Family News. It'll be printed in full in the Fair Family News. And basically we, at a group meeting of both bylaws and the elections committee, looked at the 2 advisory petitions. The OCF developed plans and processes allows the fair family to register to vote when they collect their wristbands at the fair. And we summarized our observations and gave a recommendation, which is to provide a space for GoTV and expand GoTVs out at the sticker booth to be able to register people as they come in and want to. And then we also talked about the bylaws change of candidate, change the candidate declaration date. And one of the things we realized that there is no date that the candidate has to file by. They can file at any time they want. The only date is really for getting items on the agenda for the annual meeting, and the group felt that it should be left as is. Anyway, there's a bunch more observations and recommendations. Is that we don't add a deadline, but encourage people to declare early. And the next meeting will be February 17th, 3:30 to 5:30 at the fair office to continue working on the direction of the board. And I'll get a copy of the full report to the secretary to get it.
What was the time?
February 17th, 3:30 to 5:30.
And does it
right
say,
after Pat plan.
Okay.
And it's at the fair office, so.
Did she say anywhere in there where they solicited member input for the summary? I didn't know. I guess I'll have to read the summary.
The meeting was open to anyone and was publicized. I have another one here. Actually, sure.
Are there recommendations that would require action by the board?
No, not yet.
This is
a first report. We're continuing the entire discussion.
That's fine. I want to make sure we get it on the agenda at the point at which you have recommendations.
Correct.
And Paxton, you got another?
Somebody else can make it, and then while I find the other one.
Okay, who's the next committee? Diane.
I'll try to before this appears from the phone at my star.
Whoops.
This is the final report of the Diversity Task Force. as the task force is now going to be a committee of the board, so that means you will still be getting reports. While the diversity task force was not able to accomplish all that was mandated in the board motion that created it, its members have worked hard towards that goal. The realization that diversity issues, including equity and inclusion, will not be solved in the time frame of a task force led us to desire the creation of a committee to work towards solutions. The task force held several learning opportunities which were open to all fair family and brought a greater understanding of the issues of procreation and white privilege to our awareness. In order to continue with its work, the new committee, see it already, I can't even breathe on these and they do something stupid. No, it went from, search to inbox. Archives, fan trash, that's all that.
Should we go on?
For now.
Okay,
No,
we'll go on.
I'm not quite done,
Well,
I'll
we-
just wing it then.
Okay, wait it for the rest.
We need
Oh,
members.
you're in. Anyway, we're opening the call for new members, and because the original motion that created the committee wanted a broad cross-section of the fair family, from crews and booth people and entertainers and all, we are hoping to get some members to represent the different areas of the fair so that there will be education moving both ways. Hopefully that members will take it to their crews or their booths and have that flow going. We also in the original motion had talked about having a budget. We've had learning opportunities. There will be more. This is something that the fair, we feel like, is a little behind based on my work with other nonprofits and watershed councils and stuff, and 3-day diversity trainings, and so that we need to up our game in that. No, just give it up. Just give it up. Get my flip phone. Anyway, so we are really seeking new members, and people can send their application to be a member into the office. And the other thing that we want to have some input into, probably create a few questions for the candidates for the executive director, because having somebody that's very competent with diversity issues is going to be important.
Can I ask a question?
Aaron?
Oh, I
sorry.
just wanted to ask a
Clarifying
question. Do you have a meeting date set?
Oh, we do. We have the Monday, the 25th of this month at the fair office.
At what time?
6 o'clock.
6.
Monday, the 25th, 6 p.m., fair office. Aaron?
Okay, I'm sorry, Paxton, I had another question for you, and I meant to make it to that elections meeting, and I just couldn't. When you guys, you said you publicized the meeting, was it posted on the .net site, or where are you publicizing things so that people can find them when they want to know when the meetings are?
I think through the minutes, and
Just through the
then
minutes?
also we had a go-to meeting, and that was announced that anybody could come in.
I'm sorry, I don't know how that would be announced. I'm just curious, how was
So
that?
this is our time for announcements. Could we do discussion at another time?
Sure, okay.
I'll get back to you on
It was
that.
a committee report, so I just was curious. All right, thank you.
Are there committee reports?
Yes.
We'll go to Jane and then we'll go back to Paxton.
Katie couldn't be here, but she wanted you to know that she's sending the Elders Committee minutes to Kimo, and they'll be in the Fair Family News.
Paxton.
Path Planning. Path Planning held their subcommittee roundup in December where smoking sections were discussed. Progress on refining these spaces will be made in coming months. January's meeting was held on the 20th. Sandra Bauer presented specifics on a 2 to 3 craft demonstration booth for the 50th. Multiple site options were considered. A motion was passed, a craft demonstration area at Black Oak Park. This pocket park by the sauna offers power, water, access, and room, along with an invested interest of the Ritz. The motion was voted on and passed 9-0, 2 abstained. Still Living Room reported that they have voted to keep their current space and expand. February's meeting will be held on the 17th in the town office, noon to 3. Will include a GPS overview. I believe that means mapping overview.
Other committee reports, Dean?
KOCF is moving. We have surveyed the interference in our broadcasting area, consulted with our engineering team, and have been given the green light by our FCC consultant, and have decided to move to a different frequency. In April, actually in the next few days, we're probably going to file a construction permit through the FCC if they're open. They were closed for a while. In April, KOCF will broadcast on a new frequency of 92.7. We're working on slogans. A little bit of heaven, 92.7. I don't know. Tweedledee. No.
Any new bumper stickers?
Yeah, we're working on, there's going to be new bumper stickers and t-shirts coming out soon. This change will signal the beginning of a number of steps and expenses that will happen over the next 18 to 24 months to increase the listening area of the station and ultimately set us on a path to gain full power status with the FCC. Our current transmitter location at Lane Fire Authority Fire Station will continue for the foreseeable future, but we will also begin to develop a new transmitter infrastructure atop Bolton Hill at the Bonita water tank site. Transmitting at this new higher elevation will improve the distance our signal can travel. In radio, height makes might. The new frequency will ensure we don't have an adjacent station interfering with our signal and in effect blocking how far that signal will travel. To help facilitate and fund these changes, our development coordinator and program director Andy Goldfinger has scheduled fundraising activities happening each month between now and October. Once we've switched over to our new frequency, we'll also be working to increase our underwriting sales and to $16,000. As part of our fundraising strategy, we have requested a matching grant from the Oregon Country Fair Budget Committee via the capital projects request. I'm asking for your support on that request. It is the intent of the station's operating volunteers to raise about $10,000 over the next 24 months. Based on our history, I believe we will not only reach that goal, but will likely surpass it. I mentioned fundraisers, and I'd like you all to come to World Pies after the committee meetings on the 17th. We're going to have a Valentine's, Cure Your Valentine's Day Blues from 4 o'clock to 8 p.m. Yeah. Party.
Sure. You mentioned a matching grant. Do you have a monetary value you guys are thinking of? Because you mentioned you're going
to... Our proposal is based on a application for a translator. Translators put us into a different world of laws with the FCC. They only open their windows for translators about every 15 years, and it's been about 15 years since the last window opened. So our FCC consultant believes that in the next 24 months that window is going to reopen. We're going to apply for a translator put up on Bolton Hill that at a different frequency that are currently holding another frequency, or will be shortly once we finish this current permit. But if we can get all of those pieces to fall into place, it'll cost us about $16,000 because we'll have to buy another transmitter. Without that, we'll probably move our current transmitter to the top of Bolton Hill, and that'll still give us further medium and long-term plans all starting in the next couple of months. So if it costs $16,000, we're asking for $8,000. That's what we're asking. And we'll match the rest. So we're looking for a 50-50 match with our expenses towards this work.
Great, thank you.
Are there other committees that need to report? John?
I've got two, the Personnel Policies Committee, the 3 members of the committee want to continue to serve on the committee. There's a motion later that will address the composition of the committee. And the committee decided that it would prefer to refer the Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual to our HR consultant for their assistance in splitting out the policies and procedures. So that's the Personnel Policies Committee report. ED Search Committee, we have secured the assistance of a consultant for the search process. The committee's continuing to meet weekly, either as a committee or subcommittees. We're working on a timeline. Tentatively, we're looking at trying to have a recommendation to the board at the June board meeting, and opportunities for board and member and whoever else input in, some kind of mechanism for people to have a way to see it, interact with the finalists at least. We aren't sure what that looks like yet. Probably sometime between mid to late April and mid-May. But these are all dependent on everything progressing like we think it might progress. And we're working on our recruitment strategy now. One of the things that we want to do, we have sent some messages out to some coordinators and board members, but I want to make it available to anybody in the FAIR family. If you know of people who you think might make a good executive director, or you know people who might know people who might make a good executive director, we'd ask that you send those names and the contact information to Lily. Her email has already been mentioned earlier tonight.
lilyclearwater@gmail.com. L-I-L-Y, clearwater@gmail.com.
Is that the same one on the .NET site?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And this doesn't have to be people who have expressed an interest. This could be somebody that you know who has expressed no interest at all, but you think would make a good executive director. And part of our process is contacting people who may not even have thought about applying for the job, but we've identified them as possible good people who might make a good executive director. And part of the process is interacting with them to see if they're interested in the job. So, but if you can get those things to Lily as quickly as possible, we can incorporate people's suggestions into the master list that we'll be going over and proceeding from. And that's the report.
Thanks, John. Are there other committee reports? Seeing none, so let's move on. It's the time for member input. I was asked to end this meeting by 10 o'clock. I'd like to give 30 seconds per person for member input, but if I'm going to do that, I need an agreement from the room that everyone's going to abide by that. When I say it's 30 seconds, you stop talking. Are we all good with that? Okay, I will not recognize you. All right, time for member input. Please.
All right. Hey guys. I'm sorry. Okay. What I'd like to do is to present a suggestion for the fair to start doing this year. Okay. And that.
Nice idea.
But anyway, yeah.
1972.
1982.
All right, others? It is a great idea, and I'm sorry to cut you off. Other member input? Yes.
I'd like to remind the board the new office location task force committee is waiting for your feedback before you can move on.
5 seconds, all right. Others? Please, Mike.
My main concern a lot of times is just getting information out to the members of the fair. And I feel that the board is actually coming around to that. Thank you, Karen. I did send something, a communication to all the board members, so I'm not going to read it. And in the interest of brevity, I'm just saying that that's my position. I believe that not all FAIR members are members of the coordinators, and so there needs to be a way to inform the membership about what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate your brevity. Other member input? Please.
I should have done this during announcements, and it's kind of referring to you, Michael James Long, because we've had some feedback, you and some others, but we've had feedback regarding concerns about holes in our grievance policy and basic checks and balances as we undergo structural changes in our organization. And I just wanted to acknowledge you, Michael James Long, because I've talked to the board and you about the formation of a committee, like a panel of peers, a place. I'm going to give more detail as we go along. I plan on working with Kat and Lily from mediation team on this, and so I just wanted to acknowledge you that I don't have it up here yet, but we are going to be working on it.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to give a member input that I should have done at the beginning. A pair of gloves was left here at a previous meeting. Very nice leather gloves. Somebody with much smaller hands than me. Otherwise, I'd just take them. So, but if you lost a pair of leather gloves at a board meeting, let me know. All right. That moves us to the treasurer's report. Hillary and Linda, take it away.
We had the budget meeting last week. For anybody who wants to hear what that was about, it's when the link was sent out. It was videotaped. The board did pass the operating budget for the 2019 fair. We're gearing up now for capital projects. So we have a lot of requests that have come in. I can tell you that just as this is not all of the requests, it's $195,000 worth of requests at this point. That does not include some key operational projects that have to be done, like the Little Wing expansion and the reefer dock relocation. We don't even have those numbers yet. So definitely, if you've submitted a request for a capital project, just keep that in mind. Keep those numbers in mind. The budget committee will be meeting a couple of times in February to go through all of the proposals. We'll be looking at health and safety, is that the right word? We're looking at safety and are you guys okay with doing that right now? I'm asking for a budget adjustment that are a better quality. They don't puncture as quickly, but they are more expensive, and $144 for food vouchers for Farside Traffic.
For what? Farside Traffic.
We added some additional people and didn't get that request in time because they're a team, and so we just they fell through the cracks.
Is there a motion?
If somebody make a motion?
I'll make the motion to support both of those.
I'll second. I heard Justin first. Justin seconds. All right. Is there a member in this discussion or about this request?
For the support with the budget committee in particular, Chrislyn was physically had not yet met on the page. We started posting things, so then we started sending more information. So I apologize. I know it was overwhelming, and I really want to thank particularly the new board members who stuck with it when it's a complicated process, and Peaches said how frustrating it was to not be in on the revenue piece of it and then be expected to have the big picture. So, I heard that, we're going to be talking about the timing and how we're doing it. We're working on a 2-year budget cycle, so the revenue part, it is a lot of catch up, but I think we need to be able to present that picture like in a full way. We will take all the feedback we got into consideration in setting our schedule for next year, and we are going to work on setting the schedule out earlier, and hopefully that will get ahead of some of the problems. We were also very aware of one of the big problems with our revenue projection. We talked about it in the financial planning, and for next year I think we really need to do something with it, It used to be that past sales and registration were only off by about $15,000 to $20,000 in the budget to what we expected in actuality. And over the years, between more parking stickers going out, elders growing tremendously, and I don't know if registration selling more or what, but those gaps have gotten a lot bigger. And that was part of why we were using the 2018 revenue as a comparison for all of our scenarios to say what would happen if this happened. That was a much more realistic revenue number to start with, and we do need to update those numbers. We talked about doing it this year, we didn't get it done, and then for next year in our budgeting process, you know, we are going to do that. We can predict very, very clearly hypothetical situations with our admissions, and we're trying to make sure that we're getting the reports and the feedback to be able to do that in the same way with our past sales and our registration. We've had a hard time accomplishing that, but that's one of our current goals that we're working on, and I think that we'll be able to accomplish that a lot better going forward. There was also, so thank you very much for your patience, and we will try to give you better information for you to participate with that. I passed a paper out to the board. There was a lot of talk about fiduciary responsibility, and I know the board's had some trainings in that, and I know this board is very eager to fulfill their responsibilities and to understand the expectations, and just I really support board training, and I support the board having common language, and when somebody says fiduciary responsibility, for everybody to be able to have an agreement about what that means. And what you see most commonly, fiduciary responsibility means that a fiduciary is somebody who's acting on behalf of another body or another entity or another person. And so your fiduciary responsibility is to act for the fair. And the fiduciary responsibility means that they will act with due care. They will make prudent decisions. They will use information that's available to them. They will show loyalty to the fair. They'll deal with conflicts of interest appropriately. They will make the kind of decisions, business decisions, that they would make in their own interest for the interest of the fair. And you can Google fiduciary responsibility nonprofits and see other ways that it's laid out. It's laid out in Oregon law, and any organization that's training about nonprofit duties will train that. So it's broader than just financial duties. It's about behaviors, but it's also dealing with an ordinary person, with coming with whatever training they have, using the training they have, but if they don't have any specific training, coming to it from an earnest point of view, applying themselves, and making prudent decisions. And I really want to thank the board. As I said in an email, I really saw a lot of intelligent, engaged people trying very hard to make sense out of all these spreadsheets that are where they're coming at you. So thank you very, very much.
That was so much fun.
Somebody said fire hose. And another budget adjustment from Linda.
Sorry, I forgot. In the hopes that we will have an executive director by the time the fair comes, we want to allocate this person the same inventory that they would be allocated if they existed. So part of that allocation is 333 food vouchers, so $999 as a budget adjustment, and they use this for. Chris Lynn could speak to us more of what they all use it for, but it's not personal. It's for business.
So this is essentially a budgeted amount for us to do troubleshooting or last minute adjustments, or like, oh crap, turns out we need you to add 2 people to do this thing that we didn't realize was going to happen, so that we can provide food vouchers to situations like that. The food vouchers that we give out of these stacks are tracked and documented and handed back to inventory with the ones that we didn't hand out as well. You know, it's like number blah 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 to number blah 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 went to blah 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 for blah 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 reason. It's not like we're just handed $900 worth of food vouchers to just
make it rain.
Yeah.
You have a question, John?
Yeah, I mean, if these are for operations to deal with needs that come up during that period of time, should it not be the operations manager?
So we did
be allocated to, not the executive director?
We did discuss that, and we're not, I mean, also Shane also has, or excuse me, the site manager also has the same allocation. It's been, historically, it's just been a number that has been allocated to them.
John, And also, this person is in charge of supervising staff and making sure the internal controls is working out there and making sure our risk management, they may be working directly with some volunteers who are their eyes and ears in some of the key situations that they're responsible for without stepping on operations' toes.
Is there a motion? Oh, sorry, you have a question?
So does the operations manager have access to
Yes.
this pool of emergency doctors?
Yes, and so does the site and facilities manager. This is just in addition to that. We had removed it because we didn't have somebody in that position, and then we realized like, oh, well, hopefully we will have somebody in that position. And so, does that make sense?
So if the person is not hired, we will not allocate the inventory.
So this is in addition to the GM food voucher 9814, like this is a separate thing? I'm just looking at
It'll
the-
be included in that, but
It'll
it's
be-
added to that, yeah.
It'll be added to.
That's where all the food vouchers that aren't otherwise in teams are show.
So is there a motion?
Would somebody make a motion
So
to
moved.
increase?
Second.
Justin moves and Paxton seconds. Is there member input on this question? Hillary?
I just want to mention that, part of why this is happening is the spreadsheets are getting more and more complete and inclusive. There was a time when there was a lot of things that didn't show up, and we're making an effort to have much better total reporting and accounting on it.
Other member input? Seeing none, moving to board discussion. Yes, Spirit.
First of all, Hillary, hopefully both of you, I've told you hopefully enough times how much I appreciate you, like I've always known how.
I'm gonna vote on this first.
Oh, I thought.
No, this is for board
Board
discussion on the
discussion.
motion.
Oh, on the motion, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So thank you so much for all you've done, and I understand all the, trying to keep up. The question I would have is like with budget adjustments, did this just come up recently? Is that why it's coming to us tonight rather than, say, like in our board packets or?
A subcommittee of the budget committee met today.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Other board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All in favor, not opposed. Are there other items for budget adjustments, treasury report? Okay, that moves us on to old business. Is there a motion about approving last month's meeting minutes?
So moved.
That John moves, and a second?
Second.
Paxton seconds. Is there member input about the minutes? Is there board discussion about the minutes?
I just have, it's a really minor housekeeping thing, but in the minutes as they're published in the Fair Family News from January 7th, it says budget meeting. In the minutes, when you look up just the minutes, it doesn't say that. But on the January 7th one, as they're printed in the Fair Family News, it says Board of Directors budget meeting. So I just wanted to I don't know how it's already printed, so it's on the record that that's not what it was.
Okay, we can contact maybe the Fair Family News and ask about a correction or something like that. Okay? We'll talk about it offline. Other adjustments? Otherwise, all those in favor of the 1/7/19 minutes? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All in favor, no opposed. Is there a motion about appointing Kelly Dunn as a co-coordinator for the Fair Central crew? Spirit?
I move to appoint Kelly Dunn as co-coordinator of Fair Central, happily.
Okay, Erin seconds. Stephanie?
I'd like to point out that it's the
Communications crew?
Thank you.
We talked about that. I was repeating Sam, my brain's kind of on autopilot. Communications crew, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, communication.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's-
got it. Other member input? Some thumbs up, big flat hands, do you want to talk? Okay. Board discussion? Yes.
Kelly's my boss in the real world, one of my bosses, so I'm going to recuse myself from this vote just to be transparent. I don't know, I feel like maybe I should. So I am, and John can vote for me.
Great.
Thanks. I'll actually leave the room just in case.
You're going to do that? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Spirit?
I would just like to say, and time is getting away from me, but I think it was in 2016 when Reese took a hiatus for the year. Kelly was the lead up in Fair Central and was phenomenal, and we really look to her as a leader of Fair Central in our emergency response, so she's got 2 thumbs up for me.
Okay. Other board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's 10 in favor, no opposed. John Silvermoon voting as alternate because Laurel was out of the room. You can come back now. Is there a motion to appoint Sue Theolas to the food committee? Well, Lisa, you got your name on it.
Oh, yes, I move to appoint Sue Theolas to the food committee.
Second.
And John Silverman seconds. Is there member input? Brett?
If you appoint Sue to a committee every month, this is going to run out of possibilities sometimes. Just saying. Thank you, Sue.
All right, seeing I'm going to board discussion. Anyone want to talk? All those in favor? You can vote again. So it's 10 in favor, no opposed. John Silvermoon voting as an alternate because Laurel was still out of the room.
Can I ask the board a question whether, since the Daily Emerald person is here, if there's a way we can move that up a little bit so they don't have to sit here for another hour and a half?
Can we move the Daily Emerald up to next?
And maybe limit the discussion to 15 minutes at max.
Less
so
than
that we can
minutes.
make
No,
sure we
10
get
minutes.
through it.
15 minutes?
So is there objection to moving this up on the agenda?
No.
Okay. In that case, is there a motion? You have to be on.
Well, I'd like to, it's hard to make a motion without some discussion, but if we did have discussion, the motion I would tend to make would be to ask the general manager to meet with them to work out an agreement, to come back with the board. I mean, needs to discuss the possibilities.
I'm hearing like a motion to direct the general manager to meet with Bill to discuss the feasibility of this project?
Yeah, I mean, I realize that there's a time frame that he's working under, but I don't think we as a board could commit to a contract of any kind without seeing it.
Sure.
And we don't meet till March. And so my hope would be that, either the 50th anniversary task force people or, I'm not sure, but Kristin's got some, just trying to figure out how to proceed. I think it's an idea I'd like to explore. We've got a time crunch.
Can we just talk about it?
Let's just jump out of our normal process and just discuss this for 10 or so minutes. I'm going to go ahead and go.
Kristin wanted to respond.
I'm going to go group discussion. Kristin, you go ahead.
These are one of the emails and phone calls that I have not had a chance to respond to.
Okay. Hillary?
I would really encourage this to not be time frame for this year. We've got so much on our plate right now, and staff has got so much on our plate. I think it's a very exciting project, and to do it for the 51st anniversary is a much more realistic time frame. It's way short to try and do it now.
Summerfield?
My question was definitely about timeline also. It seems like if we're trying to put something out by this year, maybe a focus on the first 49 years of the country fair and then a 50th year to come out on the 50th verse, because it's hard to write a book about the party that we haven't thrown yet.
Cody?
I would hope that if they do proceed with this, that we really work with the archive committee that we have established so wonderfully.
Yeah, similar to Cody's input, I would encourage working directly with the 50th, because I think they have sequence that somewhat would relate to this.
Dick.
Okay. So, I was just going to suggest that maybe empowering some people to work with him on it because of the timeline and the time decision, and inquiring whether or not he could get started on it while the deal's still being worked out, because I think people are going to be sensitive to what it contains, to make sure that, if he spent February working on it and it got canceled, would that be a disaster? But then somebody can work on it outside of this group, because really,
So historically, my understanding is that the fair has been pretty careful about our brand and our image and things that are done by other people about us. Even Susie Przansky was not allowed to use the peach logo in her book. I hope that if the board directs somebody to work with them, that it be management staff. Because, and that we would come back to the board with it. Currently, you know, we do have policies that only the board president and our GM are allowed, or their designee are allowed to speak on behalf of the organization without it being a board vote. I hope that we maintain those kinds of lines, because otherwise stuff can get really confusing and misrepresented.
In addition to what she said, Susie Brzezinski took years to put this book together. She's been part of the fair for many years, decades. Garrett Beck took decades to put this together. He's a hippie, he knows what he's talking about. I would like to know who was going to write our story, or, I mean, if we got freedom of the press so anybody can write what they want, but they shouldn't put our name on it if they're not one of us.
And this is, open discussions includes board and membership right now, so, John?
Well, my idea is to have someone explore this.
Yeah.
Addressing issues like the issue Mouseman just brought up, addressing the issue of, is this really feasible for this year? Are we really looking at something that's a longer range project? Getting a clearer idea from the Emerald folks, what are they looking at? Are they just looking at a compilation of pulling, for instance, newspaper articles that have been printed over the last 40 years? Are they looking at original writing? Are they looking at photographs? I don't know. They've come to us, they said they're interested in doing something. I just figured a broad motion that Crystal explore it with them and report back to us. Whether that manifests itself as something that will happen this year, or something that happens next year, or something that doesn't happen at all. I don't know. I mean, it's not a direction to do it, it's to explore it.
Diane, and then Aaron, and then Lisa.
Yeah, I was curious if it would be more like a picture book with text or a textbook with pictures, which are two different things.
Aaron?
I'm pretty sure that it would be hard to pull this together this year, and I do think that it might be good if maybe Crystalline and someone in the archivist or someone else works with her, maybe with them. I think Crystalline's going to be really busy for the next few months, and so it seems like maybe somebody else could yeah, maybe somebody else could start that process so she doesn't have to. I don't know.
Lisa, and then Paxton?
I support the idea of exploring this without any sort of commitment, just like you said, you know, is it feasible, is it possible to even pull it off in the given amount of time? Seems like this is coming to us with really short notice.
Crystalline?
So how
I'm sorry, I said Paxton and then I'll...
sorry.
Sorry about that.
And I was just wanting to echo that. Echo John. I think in past cases where we've had proposals like this, generally the board's directed the management and the GM in most cases, and Crystalline's kind of acting in that space now, to review and make sure that it fits both the ethics of the fair and the way it fits in, and then brings back a proposal to us or information to us about how it's going. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. The Blackman's book, you know, they came and actually got permission to start with, and then it kind of got rescinded, and they published their own book anyway, with not mentioning, you know, the fair, minimizing the you know, not using the logos and things like that. They had talked to lawyers and stuff. So there's quite a bit involved in it. And I really do believe management needs to be supervising the entire process, or at least aware of it.
So Crystalline, and then John, and then Dean, and then Reggie.
So I just wanted to say, like, had I not gotten sick and then been going through this personal stuff, I would have had this conversation without y'all directing me, and then I would have vetted it a little bit more and potentially brought it to you guys if it was something that I thought we could potentially move forward with. Because of personal situation, you know, that's not how this happened, but I'm more than happy to make a meeting with him.
So the board motion really isn't needed to direct you to meet with Bill, you can just meet with Bill. John?
Yeah, I'd encourage Crystalline, Jack, or whoever's going with Bill to include both the archivist and at least one person from the 50th Task Force. Since they're working hard to put together the historic story for public presentation this year. So I think all of that should be in coordination.
Dean?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it seems to me we've been down this path before, and I'll warn Bill that we had somebody else that had the board at the last minute basically vote no on the project. But I think it would be wonderful if our souvenir booth could sell a book about the country fair with logos and editorial control by the fair. I think it would be a moneymaker. I think we'd sell lots and lots of copies, probably more than 3,000 over the years. I mean, if it's done right, we could sell it for 25 years, till the 75th. So I would encourage that we try to do it. I don't think we should try to hammer it out this month. I think it should be something that it's about the first 50 years of the country fair. And we could start selling it in a year or two.
So Reggie and a couple of other people have raised their hands, but we're about at the time we had set for this, so I think if it's okay, we can let Reggie have the last word, and then this will come back after a meeting happens. So, are you okay?
Yeah.
Is what you have to say super burning?
Go ahead, Reggie.
Well, all I would like to say is that I would like to volunteer for helping on this go-between and everything. With that, I just like to volunteer my time.
Thank you.
Put my energy into it. Okay?
I do want to say it out loud because we also need to know that Susie has been working hard on volume 2 of her book, and it will be released at the 50th this year. So we will have a nice commemorative book to sell, and they are available at the general store. Both volumes 1 and soon to be volume 2.
Thank you, Stephanie. Peaches,
I think it's a really cool idea, and I like that you're coming to us with this, and that it would be super neat to have next year something that included actually maybe our party that we're going to have this year, and told that whole story, close that loop.
Okay. I think that closes this item. We don't need to vote on anything, just discussion, which is very outside the sandbox for us, but there we are. Revisions to ED job description. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Did you get more copies?
I can.
He said did if he brought us copies, yeah.
Yes, I did.
Okay,
This
that's
is-
really, I forgot it.
And then most all the board members have seen this. I apologize for a few copies if you want to refresh your mind. I'd like to move that the board adopt the revised UG job description dated February 4th, 2019.
Jim, this is after Jim saw it.
And then and if I get a second, I'd like to give a real brief explanatory thing so people know what we're talking about.
Okay, so John moves. Is there a second?
Second.
George seconds. Sorry, Jackson.
That's okay.
And so John, you got the floor again.
Yeah, we had our executive director search consultant look at the job description.
Yes.
He made some recommendations to take out some language that, for instance, there's now a thing in here, take out language that told the ED how to do the task. So that when, for instance, that the executive director is responsible for ensuring that all employees are evaluated. And felt that how that evaluation should occur is a policy that belongs in a policy and not in a job description. And so what we did was go through and take out those things that were telling the person how to do that task, i.e. how to do the operations, and instead have those kinds of things more go into a policy if you want to ensure that it's done in a general kind of way. Most of all those changes, they mostly occurred in the fiscal administration and management section, in the employee leadership and management section and the organizational events section. For instance, this now simply says hires all regular employees. The previous version said what the hire committee was going to look like, and it had to have this person and this person and this person. And search consultant said, that's telling the executive director how to do that job specifically. If you want to have a policy that says you're hiring, or evaluation, if you want to have a 360 evaluation, that's a policy telling someone that you need to do your evaluation by following these particular steps. That's telling the person how to do their job. So that's basically the changes that were made, is taking out that kind of language.
Okay, so that's member input first. Going once? Or twice? Dean?
I don't know if it's necessary or not, but based on the history that I had with previous manager of the fair, they might want to know that the fair has a radio station. And it might want to be somewhere in this, that like under strategic leadership and community relations. And I don't know the wording for it, but it's just a thought.
So, and as I understand John's motion, this is about approving this new language, but it's specific to the changes that were made from a previously approved version.
Correct.
So if we could keep our input to that stuff. Just in the interest of time.
We can add that at some point.
So is this the revised language or is this the pre-revised?
This is the revised language.
John?
Well, it'd be great to see documents like this show what was revised from to what was new. And if you're going to make these things into a policy, obviously they were put in there because the board wanted to direct the general manager or the executive director to observe these, whether you're calling them a policy or a directive. So one way or the other, the board's sounds to me like it's going to be giving some either policy direction or just direction to the executive director. So I appreciate President Knopf, but there seems like there's something in that.
Other member input? I'm going to move on to board discussion. Spirit?
My understanding, I really did, I appreciated the consultant. I feel like we learned a lot, and I think he's going to be really helpful. So I do support this, but I would like the board, I believe the whole point of this was that we weren't going to be micromanaging in our job description. However, when it comes to making policy, he's not, or she is not going to be doing evaluations right away. It's going to take some time, and this should be a top priority to be working with the executive director in formulating this policy and whatever other policies we need regarding more full evaluations with reports to the board is what I would like to see moving forward. So that'll be a top priority of mine once that person gets in.
So, quick question for you, John. Was this the revised after you went to John and he sent it back, to Jim and he sent it back?
Correct.
Okay. And as long as we get the policies in place in a reasonable period of time, I'm okay with these changes. But they were put in here, the way they were put in is because we don't have the policies. So I just want to make it be known that currently we don't really have a policy that ensures effective avenues for volunteers, crafters, entertainers, and others with whom an employee interacts for input into this performance review process. So we're taking that out for now, but we will set up a policy that will put in that 360 later.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Is there any board discussion? Okay, bring it to a vote. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All in favor, none opposed. Is there a motion about the guidelines?
Yeah, and I'm not sure how, there are 9 different guideline changes proposed here, and I'm not sure how the board wants to do it. If there are certain guideline changes, I don't, what's that?
The way I've seen it done in the past is as a package for anything about which there's not objection. But if there are changes that there is objection to, then we would pull those off and discuss them separately.
Yes.
So
I'm wanting to know, I know that I talked to a couple board members before who did want to discuss some specific ones in here. And
so-
so,
May I?
yes.
What I'm going to propose is, the board members all have this in front of you. Let's take a minute and give the board members an opportunity to pull out anything from the packet that they have that they want to discuss separately, and then you can make a motion about whichever ones didn't get pulled out of that.
It was in last month.
It's in last month's packet, it's not,
It was in last, it was last month, it was on the table.
oh, it was on the table.
And real quickly for the membership, there's guideline changes regarding when wristbands can be taken off for Farside campers. There are Farside wristbands, that's unclear in the guidelines, I guess. There are 3 different ones from the reefer coordinators regarding their booth reps that are just slightly different in language. Oh no, 2 different ones. There's one regarding, some language, some house cleaning, some repetitive statements in the guidelines, and then 2 other ones regarding their booth reps. There's one, there's 2 from, that Lily has sponsored from the camping mediation team that define some clearer language around our mediation stuff. And there's one from management regarding our code of conduct that adds some language. There's one from Cart Central about adding some rules for renting the carts, and
That also has language in it about victims' rights, legal implications of victims' rights.
Yes, it's a 2-part one that also has some stuff around our consent policy and county ordinances for sound.
Okay.
So that's a lot.
Okay, can we go through those again one by one, and after you read the title of each one, I'll ask for a show of hands from the board if anyone wants to pull that off and discuss it separately, and then you can make a motion to pass anything that remains, and then we'll go through the other ones separately.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first one is from the vaudeville coordinator, and apparently, just to summarize, is there anybody who wants to talk about this one separately?
Yes.
Yes. Gotta
Okay.
pull it out.
Okay, next one.
The next one is from reefer coordinator. It just points out that there's a sentence in the guideline that's repeated twice, and they just wanted to housekeeping clean up the
Does anyone want to discuss that
text
separately?
a little bit.
Okay, so we'll put that on our package. Next one.
Normal minor edits like that don't need to be voted on as well. Just
Yeah,
FYI.
okay. And there's another one from the reefer coordinator that, after the final sentencing in guideline 83, where they have potential, so the guideline reads, in case, does anybody want to pull this one out?
I needed to ask about
Yes.
the first one. So
Yeah.
should we go one by one? Because
I think we're gonna have to
do the whole comment,
because.
then we'll go back to the one you want.
Okay, we're not going to be able to back
Except
it.
for the first one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll start with vaudeville.
Yeah.
So can I have that?
Yeah.
So we'll need a motion in a second for the vaudeville one. So we're going to get there. We'll put that motion and hear what it is.
No,
Why don't we have this in front of us?
We do.
It
came out last
Family
month.
news.
We're in the Fair Family.
Okay, hold on a second, because a lot of people are talking at once. Okay.
Before a motion comes out, I should have called you, Brad, because I had a conversation with somebody about this, but there is confusion around the timeline, the exact time of that Far Side wristband. And I believe it was till 9 p.m. on Thursday, but it would be nice to get that exact date in there because it seems like security,
So
so I
we're not talking
just,
about that one yet.
because it was the first one is why I was.
Yes,
Vaudeville is the first one?
yeah,
Okay, so I need, before we start talking about it, can we have a motion?
It is the first one.
Okay, can we have a motion about it?
yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I move to add a talk, is that okay? Go ahead.
Okay.
Update and clarify when wristbands are needed to camp on the far side.
I
second.
Do you have a second?
Okay.
Okay.
Lisa moves and Spirit seconds. And now it's time for member input. Brad, I'll recognize you if you have a date, time thing.
I thought, So can you get back to it, because we gotta just add the official date in here is what I was thinking.
I don't think there's, I honestly don't think there's ever officially,
Friday at
really
9.
ever been an official.
But it changes every year.
Exactly.
So it should just be Thursday.
Friday at 9 PM, I think, or Thursday at 9 PM.
Palmer?
I'm not sure if the motion states far side wristband or not, but you might want to state far side wristband versus normal fair wristband, because if you live on the far
It does
side,
say
you-
far side wristband.
Yes.
John?
Who enforces the far side wristbands?
Far Side crew, but we have somebody from Far Side Traffic here who I think would definitely be able to help us.
That's what I wanted.
But it goes, so it's a the bridge is a pre-post position until the fair opens, and then it's an internal position.
Okay.
So two different security people.
Would you like me to read what it is? Or do you have?
I want to recognize our far side traffic friend who might be able to ask Barry. What's your name?
Yeah, Jim Hitz.
Jim, thanks.
Traffic team leader. As a matter of practice, the far side wristband is valid through Thursday. But maybe midnight, but we don't have it any further specified than that. Brad would be able to incorporate that.
I'm just saying it's never.
And Lisa, what does it actually say in the motion?
The revised section is to read, you must have both OCF and far side wristbands to access the campsite until Friday when fair opens, or fill in correct date and time. So the question I have about this is it sounds like it's more somebody asking for clarification than an actual guideline change.
Got it. Crystal?
It sounds like the current guidelines say you must have both OCF and Far Side wristband to access the campsite before noon on Thursday.
Before noon.
So it sounds like there is clarity in the current
But
guidelines.
the person is saying that they've been told different things, and so they want clarification.
So that seems pretty operational.
pretty clear.
I don't understand.
I think
why-
operations could probably.
Just to try to shed some clarity on this,
Yes.
because I understand where this person is coming from. What happens for people that don't camp on the far side, or people that are trying to camp on the far side, but they don't drive in and they have to walk across? They aren't allowed to cross the far side bridge without a far side wristband until a certain time. There is a point at which you don't need the far side wristband to cross that bridge, but they're trying to make sure that we don't have interlopers that are just coming in and camping. That timeline of when you need it and when you don't has sometimes been unclear to some people. And as Brad was trying to describe, sometimes there's one security team that's there manning the bridge, and sometimes there's a different one. So you can end up with different answers about when you go. And so it does sound like what they're asking for is just some clarity about what's when, and trying to get something in more concrete terms, so that there's less confusion and less frustration, because sometimes people get melty on Wednesday and Thursday.
So I've got Jack and Spirit and then Sean, and we'll go from there. Jack?
So a wristband, an OCF wristband gets you
Not over the far side bridge on Wednesday.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nope.
Spirit?
It actually does. My crews
It actually does.
Well, my crews had a hard time because they take it off. I always tell them 9 PM on, it's when the gate closes for the public. It's what we've always used for all these years. So they take off that extra far side wristband at 9 PM. But then sometimes the far side bridge crew thinks it's until opening on Friday. Now they've got an issue because they don't have their far side band on. So I think that we should keep it to the public out when that, not public, but when that gate closes would be my recommendation. But
John and then Brad?
So, as I read this guideline right now, to get onto the far side before noon Thursday, you have to have the far side wristband. After noon on Thursday, you don't have to have the far side wristband.
Exactly.
If that's not what's happening, this is an operational issue, that operations needs to make sure that all the crews who are staffing that bridge know what's supposed to happen. And this is a prime example of why we should be a governance board and not an operations.
They're gonna bring kids to us, so we
This
can
is like managing when we have to.
Yeah.
But anyway, I see no reason to change it. This is not security coming to us saying we need to change that time. It's simply a matter of making sure that the people who enforce this guideline know that that's what the parameters are.
Okay?
Yeah, I think actually John's interpretation is correct, and that that afternoon on Thursday is a misinterpretation. Although, to be clear, it has never said, there's never been a time that says you don't need to have it in the guidelines at all. I would actually like to let the management team discuss it operationally and see if we can come up with an actual time that works, or just stick with what it says.
Peaches.
Okay, so it sounds like we don't need a guideline change on this right now. The guideline is established. Is that correct? Does everybody
I think
agree?
it's confusing, but-
And that we've just now brought some more attention and awareness to the problem that people are facing with the far side security and the wristband.
So if we want to cut off discussion on this and move on, the person who made the motion and seconded it would have to say that. And withdraw
I'm
the motion.
saying that.
Withdraw the motion.
Yes, I'm
Seconded?
withdrawing the motion.
Yeah.
Okay. With motion to withdraw.
I mean, I would like to clarify, but I'm not going to say it.
Okay, so the next,
It's frustrating.
guideline changes, I don't think we need a guideline change for this. It's a housekeeping language thing where on guideline 83, it kind of repeats a sentence twice. Is everybody in agreement
Yes,
about
I
that?
looked at it,
Okay.
it's true.
So
Moving on.
that's just an edit and it'll get taken care of.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Next one.
The next one is from the reefer coordinator / food committee. It's in, does anybody need to talk about this one separately and the next one? Because they're kind of, yeah, okay, we'll discuss these.
Okay.
The first one is in regards to guideline number 83, paragraph 4. It reads, in case of primary booth representative change, the booth will be automatically subject to a 2-year probationary period. Final approval of the transfer of primary booth rep status will be pending successful completion of the probationary period. The revised would say, after the final sentence ending probationary period, add, potential new food booth representatives need to be vetted by the food committee by the first Wednesday in May. Do we have anybody from the food committee? Justin.
Well, so you're moved, so moved, yeah? And then, is there a second?
Second?
Justin seconds, okay. And then we'll, I think just general discussion is working pretty well for this. I'm gonna keep doing that unless somebody tells me not to. But George, do you want to say something?
I just try to understand the impetus for this. Why is this an important thing to do? I mean, is this something that's broken and we need to fix it, or
Effectively, there's a desire to codify how we actually do things so that people can have a time when they actually want to change food reps or have somebody announce who is going to be the food rep for the future in that particular booth.
It doesn't seem like this should be part of a larger conversation about booth succession in general.
Did you want a larger conversation about booth succession in general?
I think it's something that's needed.
So, Crystalline?
I think that this is important, especially with our food booths, because there are insurance requirements and things like that that oftentimes come, that makes it different from our other booths. And so the food committee and the food team needs more time, essentially. So like changing a booth rep for a food booth is a much more significant process. And so having those kinds of requests in by a certain date in order to do it for the, it'd be whatever, May 1st or whatever, for the 2019 fair. It's not saying that you also can't request in August, but in order to have it be in effect for that year's event, it needs to happen by a certain time. I really support this.
Stephanie?
Crystal had said most of that. I mean, we have guidelines in place, guidelines in place about food booth succession. You need to have been in that food booth for 2 years, for example, versus a craft booth. You can give it over to any other juried craft person in your booth. 5 years, Justin's correcting me, but there are certain guidelines around it, and it's just saying if we have these guidelines around it and we need to check out that these people were indeed in these food booths for so many years, we need time to do that. We can't have you telling us the day before fair, which I think is reasonable.
John and then Justin and then Robin.
Is the current practice that new food booth representatives are vetted?
Yes.
Okay. This, and that current practice, and this would simply give a date by which that is
Yeah.
would need to occur.
Yes.
This is an operational decision, operations going to make it.
I guess we should.
Justin and then Robin.
I hear you, John, and I'm not opposed to that in terms of how it's implemented, but I do know from being many craft committee meetings and food committee meetings that this is an issue that comes up. There needs to be some sort of a line in the sand that it doesn't get to June or later on in the process and they end up trying to give up that food booth. So from outside of the ability to give it to operations to make this decision in terms of the guideline change. And the same thing goes for the craft to a lesser extent. We find ourselves in a position where the primary booth transfer, or even now that we have some booths that we're in the process annually of giving away that turn out to not be viable artisans to the degree that they can perform the job adequately. So this probationary period gives us an opportunity to be mandated to kind of review how they're doing as a new craft within our fair, and provides clarity to the transition on the food side.
Robin and then Peaches?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like Crystal said, it's really just this timeline. It's a timeline request, from the food committee, so they can get their work done.
Peaches and then John.
Well, I'm listening to you and, trying to decide well, this is operational and this is governance, but we are the ones who have to approve the guideline changes.
Sure.
So if the recommendation is coming to us from an operational side that this guideline change needs to happen, be more clarified, then that's our job to listen to that and take that under advisement and make the guideline change, so I support it.
John and then Spirit and then Aaron and then I think we should go to...
I just wanted to vote.
Guidelines are policies. Operations operates the policies. And it's really helpful when the board sets deadlines and processes that everybody can read and understand when there's been squishing that's on the side.
Thank you. Spirit?
We do need to vote on these, and as a governance board, what I did is look to Brad, and I'm sorry, Brad, I didn't call you sooner to see if we could clarify it. So, we are looking to operations to give us feedback. I wish we probably should have done some of this work a little earlier. We are going through a transition from operations board to governance board, so it's going to take a little bit of time here, and I think that, it's okay for us to be interacting this way. I just want to put that out there.
There's a lot of these to do, so
Let's
Lisa...
go.
I wanted to ask if the maker of the motion would be open to a friendly amendment to add the next guidelines change to this same motion,
This one
because
says
it's
the last.
Both the
similar.
deadline.
No, that they're different dates, though. One says first Wednesday and one says last Wednesday. I looked at that too.
But
I was
they're-
like, darn, we can't get them both
Let's
at the
deal
same
with them
time.
separately.
Okay.
Just so that we can-
They're different dates.
Who is the maker of this motion? It's Peaches.
Yes.
And there's a request for a friendly amendment?
No.
Okay, all those in favor? Of the motion?
On the motion, okay.
Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all opposed? George? And Spirit abstained. Okay. Next one?
And the next one is from the same coordinator. It refers to guideline 79, first paragraph, which says any changes to your menu must be approved by the food committee. And it adds the sentence, all new menu items need to be juried in by the food committee on the last Wednesday of May.
I'll second.
On or by?
Yeah.
By.
Should be
It
by.
says on.
It says on.
All the menu items need to be juried in by
It should say by.
It
the
should say
food
by.
committee.
Otherwise, the
Oh,
food committee's
on the
gonna
last day,
jury
by
everything
the
on
last
the last.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are making that change, in making the motion, you're making that change as part of the motion?
Yes.
That's the food committee's meeting
Second.
date.
Paxton
The last
seconds.
Wednesday in May is the food committee's meeting date. Okay,
So there's,
that's why on would work. All right.
all right, Paxton?
The food committee does a jury process in May as people bring in new stuff, and this is just giving them the final deadline for the food boosts that are applying. I'm sure this is the food committee's already process. And I'm sure stuff comes in late, knowing how the fair functions. So I'm perfectly happy with this.
The food committee meets every week in May. The reason why is to make sure we've got every food booth covered for the fair. This is why we want the change for food booth reps to be in the first week of May so we can deal with it in that meeting. We wanted to have the jurying on the last week of May so that everybody knows when to bring in their food, so that we can have one shot at this so that it does not in fact dribble in over time.
So you want it on, the language
It's
is
gonna be
correct
on the
when it says
last Wednesday
on
of
the
the month.
last Wednesday. Okay, well,
John? And then Jack?
So if the food committee decides to start meeting on Thursdays, we have to come and amend the guideline because we said on the last Wednesday?
If we're going to change the date of when we meet to jury food, then yes.
And that just seems crazy to me, but if that's the
leave it
way
as
we want to
by,
operate.
It would also be changed if it was by.
And respectfully, John Pincus, these kinds of things, I think, are an operational issue and not a board governance issue. I mean, the fact that food booth representatives need to be vetted, that, you know, that approaches a policy issue. But when that happens is an operational issue, so, but if we need to keep on, so be it, that just seems crazy to me.
Could in the motion it be if this date needs to change, that can be decided by operations? You know what I mean? Like I'm just losing ideas.
Just do the work. It's the way it is.
I was just gonna say, why not say the first meeting of May and the last meeting of May, and whatever day in May of the week they meet on, it's covered.
Teachers, do you feel like changing the motion to reflect what you just said? Or not? So the motion still says by, because that's what you made. If you want to make any changes to that motion at this time, or can we ready to move on?
yes, let's change it to say that, is that okay, would that work?
Yeah,
for the
it'll be
committee?
fine. Again, I really actually agree with John
Yeah.
in that this is all operations. The reason why it's before the board is because it is a guideline.
There's a guideline, I know, there's a guideline that addresses it.
The
and
suggestion
there's-
for the food.
So, yes, I'll change the language to say,
On the last meeting.
by the last
Yeah.
meeting of the food,
Last
May
Wednesday
food
of
committee meeting.
Okay.
Last food committee meeting in May.
And the second of this motion, who seconded it?
I did.
Okay, are you good with that?
Yeah, it's okay by me.
Okay, great. In that case, it's to a vote. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
It is kind of long. Would you guys like me to read the whole thing?
No.
Okay. It's a section in the guidelines to have a place where people who need conflict resolution, arbitration, or mediation can look in the guidelines and see what services there are at the fair, what crews they can go to, and how to reach those crews. It updates a less descriptive paragraph in the guidelines, page 12, section 32, that doesn't list all of the organizations or how to find them.
Is there a second? Aaron seconds. Discussion? John?
Again, I think this is an operational thing. I hope next year that we're clear on what guideline stuff we do want to deal with and leave it for operations. However, since it is before us, the Cedar mediators, if there are interpersonal disputes not connected with camping, you can visit Cedar in the Tail of the Dragon at Dragon Plaza for conflict coaching or mediation. Can they come, do you go there on Wednesday? Can they go there on Thursday? Can they go there on Friday? I mean, there's no time frame. I don't think it's useful to people to just say, go there without knowing.
Cedar arrives on fair pre-fair. They have 2 people there as of Monday.
So I'm wondering if we could put something there. And is there a way for them to email and say, they contact Cedar
I
by
believe that the
email, and
coordinators-
is Cedar available post-fair and pre-fair?
Cedar is not available for just anyone to, Cedar can be used by the Fair Family all year long through a different process, and that's addressed by the grievance process. You can't just approach Cedar for a fair mediation at any time of the year without using Cedar's business.
So I guess what I would suggest is that there be something in here that says what time period they can go to the Dragon and find Cedar. Just so people aren't filling out and going, where's Cedar?
So there's a hand in the back. You, Amy? No. Okay. Chris Lynn.
It says during this period, contact Quartermaster, Fair Central, or Cedar for assistance from people trained in conflict resolution. Quartermaster and Fair Central aren't necessarily trained in conflict resolution, so I think we should change that to and also add fair management to be connected to people or something like that. Does that make sense? Because this sounds like I can go to Fair Central and get
That really does
resolution
to be
services.
connected. The
Yeah.
intention of that sentence was
Okay.
to be connected with.
So I think we should, and I think that we should add fair management to that as well.
Okay?
Are you okay? So I want to go to you and talk about the changes that are being proposed here.
I think I can make both of the changes Crystalline suggested, both to talk about this as a connection to and add management.
Okay. And what about the change John had proposed a moment ago?
Each of these groups wrote their own statement, so though I submitted the guidelines change, I have to ask Cedar if they would be willing to add hours. And if they're willing, I'm willing to add hours.
Or each days,
Sure.
I mean, these so people know Monday or Tuesday, because I would know from this that I could go to Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, well, I'm absolutely willing to ask them.
Paxton?
I kind of assume that it's from Tuesday or Wednesday when the fair is open. I mean, we kind of set a time, Tuesday at 9 a.m. to Monday at, 6 p.m. that we consider the fair to be open and all of our functions are functioning. And that's kind of what I assume this is dealing. That's really the guidelines deal with a lot of just the regular fair. I'm not sure it needs dates or times, but I wouldn't be opposed to it.
I think that ends the discussion. I don't see any more hands. All those in favor?
If I make the changes.
As amended, all those in favor of the proposal to do the new guideline as amended, which would be what's written with the addition of adding management and clarifying that it's to be connected with, and adding the hours, assuming that Cedar is okay with adding the hours, and if they're not, then not doing that.
Yeah.
I know that's complicated.
So we're voting on faith.
Vote on faith.
Vote on faith.
Okay.
All those in favor of
As long as
faith?
it's clear.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 opposed. 1, and that's Spirit opposed. Next one.
The next one is also mine. It is just a brief paragraph describing the camping mediation team in the section on camping crew, of which we are officially a branch.
Is there a second?
Second.
Paxton seconds. Discussion? I see some thumbs up. John?
So if they want to reach out to you and main camp is closed, where do they go?
I listed the email address I have opened for this purpose specifically.
And if they don't have email?
I mean, they
Fair
could,
Central and they're connected with you?
so once main camp is closed, our book is at Fair Central, but we've had very few mediations that have required anything after main camp is closed, because we're a camping location territory crew that often deals with people as they're moving in. If you want me to add that our book will be at Fair Central during the fair, that's okay with me.
This is my suggestion.
Paxton, you okay with change? Okay.
Are you posted up down below?
Yeah. Me?
No.
Oh.
The grievance. Underneath there. Is that what I just heard?
No. We have the book, like the bees book.
Yeah.
Oh,
The-
okay.
The Camping Resolutions
Okay.
book.
All right.
No,
Okay.
we're not posted up.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor of the motion as amended? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All in favor, none opposed. Next.
Okay, next, moving on.
I apologize for making fast.
Code of conduct.
There's a code of conduct clarification. Is there a bum in the house who wants to speak to this one? I'll just read it.
It's pretty self-explanatory.
Yes.
Strickland?
This just, it changes the current code of conduct to just adds in what says, the guidelines apply whenever and wherever we gather on OCF activities or discussion, or for OCF activities or discussion in person or online. So essentially saying that even online or electronic communications related to the OCF, you still need to follow the code of conduct and the guidelines.
More discussion? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, we need a motion. So move, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so that was Lily seconded. Is there discussion? John?
So when you say guidelines, I assume that includes the code of conduct?
It does. This would become part of the code of conduct.
Yeah, this is a change to it.
So it amends the code of conduct to include online, essentially.
That's the big difference.
John?
I don't know, I think this needs a lot more clarity because it kind of moves into the area of communication or it becomes a freedom of speech issue in everyday life. So I don't think it's appropriate for the fair to be regulating people's speech between one another in everyday life.
Kelly?
So previously it said the guidelines apply whenever and wherever we gather for OCF activities. So if we're adding OCF activities for discussion in person or online, the questions that come up for me is this referring to official OCF sanctioned events, activities, meetings, and discussions? Or are these casual discussions that might take place at a bar or a concert or a private party? And are we monitoring Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Marco Polo, all this stuff? And if that's the case, who's doing that as a full-time job? And who decides if there are disciplinary actions to be taken against someone who participated in a conversation that was judged as negative or disrespectful or abusive? Then who's deciding that? Who's the recipient of disciplinary actions? What are those disciplinary actions? And who's administering disciplinary actions to someone based on a discussion that was had on some form of social media? Just food for thought. So then it says about the bottom paragraph is, why does this change need to be made? Who would be affected? Maybe that paragraph is what makes more sense to have how the revised section is to read, so that what the intention is that we hope to put out there, not, I think you're picking up what I'm putting down. That's what I have to say about that.
Karen?
I think that that's a really important statement, but I think having a code of conduct for email and interpersonal communication via devices is really important because of the way that I personally see a lot of our just community communicating with each other in really unfriendly ways all across the board. I don't think that the same understanding that we have like here in this room stretches to the media, which is really important, that people feel pretty comfortable.
Thank you. Laurel, and then Peaches, and then Erin.
I think that it's obvious that this was put in the code of conduct and not in the other sections of the guidelines because no one is asking for any disciplinary action. This is just simply a reminder to be kind, and I think that this gives people resources if they don't want to, if it's not a criminal matter, if they don't want to actually take action through Facebook. I think this gives people resources to be able to ask for help. And I really hope that you codify in words now that our technology and our communication is changing, that it's important that we uphold this code of conduct wherever we communicate with each other. I really hope you pass this guideline change.
So it's Peaches, Aaron, Crystal, and Brad.
I just have like a more of a procedural question about when the code of conduct was developed. Was it developed as, I'm trying to separate, like, are we changing a guideline or are we changing our code of conduct? And I don't know, maybe those aren't separate things, you know, maybe when our code of conduct as it is was it created, you know, as a guideline? Do you know what I'm saying?
No. So
Code of
Like,
conduct was created before Facebook.
Yes, I know that.
So
I don't.
This discussion is very valid.
Yeah, okay, I'm not disagreeing with the premise of it, I'm just trying to understand it as changing the guideline, but then actually changing our code of conduct, a
You're saying
separate thing.
Does the code of conduct exist separately from the guidelines?
Correct.
Kind of. I mean, it's defined differently in the book of guidelines.
Okay.
May I weigh in?
Yes, please.
Actually, I got quite a stack of people who want to talk, and it sounds like it's a complicated question, and several of the people who want to weigh in are on my stack, so you can make this part of your turn. Aaron?
So I kind of have the same question Peaches does, because I understand. I don't think, I mean, if we're actually changing the guidelines, or are we changing the code of conduct and the guidelines? I don't know if we're doing both. And I think that the whole question about what Shelley brought up about what are we going to do if someone breaches our code of conduct online needs to be addressed. I think it's a much more complicated question. I think it's something that the board and the membership needs to work on as a totally separate thing, because this discussion, it's too great a discussion to just throw in here in person or online. I mean, obviously our activities are in person, but even if we took that out and we just said online, the freedom of speech issue has to be addressed for sure. And what do we do with our code of conduct? Conversations have arisen about what is our code of conduct about and how do we enforce it. So if we put this in here, and if someone has an online violation of our code of conduct, then if we have an enforcement thing that we're using, it could be used for a person online that just said something online. So I think it needs to be talked about a lot. We have to figure out what the enforcement is. It is freedom of speech. It is complicated conversations that don't have to do just with at the fair and talking to each other. So I can't support this the way it is.
Okay, so just right now, I want to point out that I have Crystalline, Brad, Fire Dick, Hillary, John Silverman, Paxton, Laurel G, Summerfield, Spirit, Lily, and Robin who want to speak. If each of you speaks for 1 minute, that'll be a lot of minutes. Well, my job is to keep the meeting running. So you don't have to like the way I do it, but you do have to listen to what I say. I would like to ask how many people on the board feel ready to bring this to a vote versus how many people want to continue discussion about it.
I'd bring it to a vote, I just have something quick to say.
I also have one sentence. I have only one sentence. I'll go so fast.
Okay, everybody's got something important. We'll keep on the stack.
So I just wanted to let you guys know that there are potential consequences for breaking the code of conduct in the community agreement part of the guidelines book. So just there is potential consequences to this. We have a significant problem with people hiding behind their keyboards and doing incredibly abusive and harassing behavior. Just the other day, I was forwarded an email where somebody who has been harassing me since long before I became an employee of this organization referred the management team to Stalin. You think it's funny, but it's real. Like, this got sent out to a whole bunch of people comparing us to people who murdered
millions of people. This is not okay. And right now, we don't have any kind of guidelines around being able to say, hey, this is not okay. And I get freedom of speech, and it's totally different to be like, I really disagree with the management team. But right now, people are able to just do whatever they want on Facebook and in emails and listservs and so on and so forth. And we're just sitting here like, well, please be nice to me.
Brad?
I know that there have been grievances contemplated at least around this very issue, and I think, like it or not, we have to have this conversation. I actually think it's a really simple, straightforward statement to make as an organization, that we value each other, whether we're meeting face-to-face or in an online situation, and treat each other with the respect that we all deserve. I think it's pretty straightforward, so I hope you guys support it.
And I don't disagree at all with the principle of treating each other fairly. I think as long as it doesn't start becoming I'm offended and therefore you're guilty kind of problem, because people need to be able to disagree and have conversations. Freedom of speech is sometimes hearing things that are unpleasant to hear just because you don't agree with them, as long as you're not comparing someone to Stalin or Hitler or what have you. But I would warn that my one concern would be we also value treating everybody equally. And so if John Pincus writes something really nasty about me and I complain, and then John can go up and say, well, but you didn't do anything about this, you didn't do anything about this, you didn't do anything about this, or this, or this, so why should I be punished for doing the same thing? So equal treatment, I think, is going to be a complicating factor in enforcing something like this, if it's complaint driven.
Apparently, we've got some work to do to learn how to have civil discourse. It's okay if we disagree, it's okay if we don't all like each other, but we can be polite and nice and respectful, and that this is such a hard thing. And I'm hearing language that the alt-right's using, like the free speech argument is being used to defend hate speech. Let's not do that. This is not a free speech argument. This is a respectful communication in a community argument. Let's show our values and treat each other well. And if we have to be writing it down to remind each other, let's do that. You know, it used to be that we were all either on site or in meetings when we saw each other. So to apply it online is just a change of how we are dealing with each
other. For things in social media that I felt were over a line that I would draw. But on the other hand, if I'm sending an email to a friend of mine who's in the country fair, and I'm venting, I just had an interaction with somebody, and I'm just angry, and I'm venting, and I put in that email, I just had an interaction with so-and-so, what a pea-brain, to use a phrase. Is that a violation of this guideline? And I don't know, you know. So I'm just not sure. I very definitely think this guideline for most people is going to be complaint driven, unless the person violating it is in a significant position of authority, and you know that it gets noticed. But I think most of it's going to be complaint driven because I just don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I definitely feel like our discourse could be a lot better than it has been. I don't get to vote because you haven't gone yet. So, I can continue to be conflicted.
To me, it's pretty simple. We're changing the code of conduct. We could actually do that any time during the year. The fact that it's in the guidelines is why we're dealing with it now. It's not anyway where we're dealing with the code of conduct. And the thing I wrote down here is there's no freedom of abusive speech. It shouldn't. That's a false argument, in my opinion. Respect is, in a sense, mandatory in this organization. I try to respect everybody in it. even ones that I don't get along with. And I think that's an important part. I support this motion.
Laurel.
Please listen to Hillary. It's about respect and values. It's not about consequences. It's about giving people resources.
Summerfield?
I mean, but that's what we're talking about is consequences. We're talking directly about consequences. We are in this situation because there was no policy, and that's how we got to where we are right now. There was no policy on how to deal with our behavior online in events when we're emboldened, impassioned, and unfortunately the computer does all these terrible things to all these people we love so much. I think this doesn't create a policy for how to deal with these problems. I think that we really need to address how to deal with those things. I don't think that this addresses that. I love the idea that we focus more on failure. I think that it doesn't define what meeting grounds we're talking about. It doesn't define what discussions we're talking about. I do think this is a really important work, and I'm glad that we're talking about it, but I think this is a simple way to address a really complex problem. So I hope we can continue to discuss that.
Spirit?
I agree that I don't feel like this actually resolves anything. For me, what constitutes and who determines what abuse and harassment is except for your blatant defamation? And I feel like, online we don't really have a lot of forums where we can have respectful debate, which I feel is important. And sometimes respectful debate is okay for some and other people are offended by it. I think that we need to focus on maybe solutions on, the solution is not here in this guideline. Until we have clear policy around discipline protocol, I'm not going to support changing our code of conduct and such. But I do want to continue the discussion about how we might be able to have that and encourage that healthy debate, and maybe we need to have an open work session and do some sensitivity training with our membership. So I think those are the kind of things that are going to change this, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Billy?
So others have already said that the freedom of speech does not protect the manner of speech. It protects the fact that you are allowed to speak. The freedom of expression, which is granted is in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which the U.S. is not a signatory, but the country fair should be, says that right is therefore subject to certain restrictions. And I could read you the list of restrictions, but I'm going to just bring out libel, slander, obscenity, incitement, and fighting words are all listed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I feel like, as a human rights anthropologist, it's shocking to me that this group of people that I would have thought would have supported that document seem unable to separate the difference between the right to speech and the manner of speech. That how versus why is a thing that I think is really important for us to get at. No one is suggesting limiting the right to speech. I think lots of us, though, are suggesting the sussing out the ability to speak in a way that is kind. If you'd like to talk more about this, I said I'd only speak for one sentence, but there's a concept called the offense principle. Maybe we need to bring the concept of the offense principle offline, which says that the restriction on forms of expression deemed offensive to society, considering factors such as extent, duration, motives of the speaker, and the ease with which it could be avoided. And I think it's really easy to avoid saying things comparing people to Stalin. I think that's pretty easy, especially in writing.
Robin?
Well, I just want to say that I find this extremely shocking and makes me really sad that our ethos at the fair, which is a beautiful part of this organization, the code of conduct, is about agreeing that we're going to be kind to each other. And to extend that beyond the fair itself is obvious. And I find it sad that we're even discussing this.
John?
Yeah, I really appreciate the definitions that Lily provided there, because I think those are the kind of things that start to clarify what constitutes abusive speech, or
Can we have that turned off?
what constitutes abusive speech versus differences of opinion. The way that this guideline is written, it seems so broad, it could be interpreted to pertain to differences of opinion or comparisons of governmental structures, for instance, to historical governmental structures. That's not the same thing as comparing a person to Stalin, okay? People have to be able to engage in analysis in order to rationally discuss things. And so I think it's really, I personally try to follow a code of conduct that avoids abusive speech and personal attacks. I don't think if you listen to me in these meetings, you never hear me do that, or I hope you never hear me do that, and if you do, slap me down, please. But that's somebody's judgment as to whether that's the case or not, you know? And that's where the problem lies, is the breadth of this. The breadth of this can be interpreted in so many different ways and in such a broad swath that it may be used to pertain to what is really basically free expression or analysis.
Kate?
So the country fair is supposedly an intentional community where we come together intentionally and we intentionally abide by this code of conduct. It isn't actually so difficult to choose words that are respectful. You can disagree with someone without being completely disrespectful, rude, or abusive. It's possible to say, I don't agree with that. It's possible to say, this is another way to do this. It's possible to say, there are other methods we can try. It's possible to phrase things in ways that show your disagreement, but do not abuse someone else. It's a possible thing, and that is what would go with our code of conduct.
Aaron?
Okay, so when I addressed freedom of speech earlier, I really meant more like what Lily's talking about. We don't want to attack people, we don't want to be rude, we don't want to be mean. But I have been told that we can remove people from the fair for a violation of our code of conduct. So that means that someone has to determine when the code of conduct has been violated and how. And this one sentence is not enough to cover all of that, and so I'd rather we left the code of conduct the way it is, and like sensitivity training, workshops, let's get together and figure out what we need to do about social media, and figure out what the consequences actually are if you violate the code of conduct. Because if we truly can remove people from their duties because of violating the code of conduct, that is a very serious discussion. And getting along with everybody and being kind, and that's what we all want to do. But the consequences are huge in this conversation. So that's where I'm at with this.
George?
I absolutely agree that it should be our goal and our values to treat each other kindly and to select our words carefully and to not be abusive online. I also think it's really a difficult thing to regulate. When people can hide, people disappear, people send messages from all different places. It may be people's absolute intention to upset you, their absolute intention to get under your skin. And I think it's going to be hard to stop that. I think we can censor them as a community if we find out who they are. I think that they're, by example, how we disagree with one another, I think we can live that example. I do think that even in the broader community, there are lines that can be crossed. And so when lines are crossed that threaten physical violence, threaten acts of violence, threaten acts of terrorism, action's taken. And these are the kinds of things that get reported to authorities. So if people are making threats online, it's a completely different conversation. I'm sorry that that some people get to the place where they can't find words to express themselves like this, and I'm sorry for the hurt that happens. But I don't know how we can really truly regulate it.
So there's two more people who want to speak. Since, like I said, I wasn't taking any more names, we'll go ahead and recognize those two, and then we can go to a vote. Crystalline?
I was just going to say we could change the change to just say the guidelines apply whenever and wherever we gather, like it currently does for OCF activities, like in person or online, so that it kind of eliminates the I'm just venting to a friend of mine, and it makes it more like that it's like somewhere where the fair is gathering, like a Facebook group or I mean, you know, it was just an idea of something that might make people feel a little bit more comfortable versus, you know, like I'm in a bar and I'm venting and somebody overhears me and didn't like what I had to, you know, like.
So you're taking out or discussion? Is that all?
No, I would be taking out or discussion. So for OCF, or it could just say whenever or wherever we gather. For, I mean, oh, no, I don't know. I just threw a wrench in it, sorry.
Okay, Jack?
You know, I mean, I think by fixating on consequences, we might be missing the point.
Exactly.
If we set the bar too high, that's okay. What we're doing now is we're refusing to acknowledge the bar.
Yes.
That's not what I want. I mean, that's not, you know, when you start looking at it that way, you start hurting all the people that have already been hurt by our insensitivity. At some point, we gotta get it. And, you know, I mean, I'm not that I'm gonna say that going on board with, you know, what the world thinks is freedom of expression. I don't even know if that's bar is really high enough. You know, I mean, look where we're at. So I think if we keep it up here, it's not so much about consequence. It's more about what you know, what our morals are, what we believe. You know, I mean, then if consequences have to be put out, at least then we know that we have the support to put the consequences out there to make it right. And when you start making things right, then the people that have been hurt become healed. And we've got some of that to do. So I'm not understanding why we're trying to tamp this down. This is a big discussion, but I think we should be at a place where we're raising it.
That brings the board to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, is it as amended or is it just the motion? All those in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All opposed? None. Any abstentions? That's Peaches, Aaron, and Spirit abstained. Did 7 yeses carry?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Please forgive me for my inability to do math after 9 o'clock. How many more of these we got?
Oh my God. So we've got this really long kind of 2-part one from Cart Central, and then the one about the sound ordinance.
A two-parter from Fair Central and then, or from Cart Central and then a sound thing.
Sound thing, yes.
Okay.
Is this a card central and really two?
It's two.
Yeah, it's two.
Can we separate that?
Yes, we can. The first one has to do with adding some sort of rules about renting carts.
Okay.
Oh no, the first part has to do with the sexual misconduct.
No, it's about the.
First one, okay, yeah, like,
Page 17, section 43.
yes, page 17, section 43. Revised section to read about keeping the carts on the path. Oh, announce your presence when you go to check out a peach cart. Promptly return your carts, return the carts clean, and report repairs. Carts are not safe for children. These types of things. At present, there is no guidance or rules on cart usage. This affects the availability of carts for family, longevity and safety of usage, and clarifies expectations of use, basically.
Okay,
So, I'm gonna
you're gonna move.
move.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And Lily seconds. Is there discussion about this? Clarifications about rules?
Cart Central here?
I think this is a good idea. I think carts, every year, it seems like carts are kind of an issue. I've had carts taken, you know, that I was using, and I don't know, I think this is good.
Spirit?
I just was curious if the bum for Cart Central or management, if this is approved, vetted through you as well. I guess that would be the question that I have.
Priscilla?
Yeah, we're
Good with
Okay.
it? Okay. Other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion?
Are you voting?
Are you voting or did I?
No.
Okay. Five, six, yeah, it's all in favor, none opposed, just John Silverman voting as an alternate, because Laurel had to go home. All right,
Okay, the second part of this request from Cart Central has to do with our consent policy. On page 8 of the, do you have information about this? Thank you.
Erin, the new Carts Crew Co-Coordinator, is an attorney. She's not specifically a victims' rights attorney, but in her work as an attorney that has bordered on victims' rights, she has some expertise in this. And she has noticed that our consent policy has a lot of holes in it, most of which further victimize victims of non-consensual acts. She is trying to close those loops, and if the board gives her approval, she'd like to work with a pro bono victims' rights attorney to further close those loops for the next set of guidelines.
Not this year.
She didn't notice it with enough time to do that, to get permission. But she did know from her own legal training things that she could do without a specific victims' rights attorney. And that's what you see reflected in her change. And there's a few parts of it, but one of the things that she felt most important was clearly elucidating areas, the things that people can do after they've been the victim, say, of a sexual assault, and clearly stating that if they make a statement to the fair, sometimes those statements are shared. They're not, and she just felt like that was really important to her from a victim's rights things, just so that there isn't the unexpected expectation that those wouldn't be shared with only with the person you're giving that to. And so she doesn't want to change her practice. She understands that she believes that the practice that the staff and management use is fine. She's not trying to change the practice. She just wanted to change the language in the code of conduct. In the guidelines.
so Peaches moves. Is
I
this-
second
and
that one
Lily
as well.
seconds. Is there discussion on the proposed changes? Priscilla?
So we have like a protocol of how we respond. We call them personal violations so that there's confidentiality over the radio. No identifying information is given without permission, even amongst the other managers. So there is something that's not like if, somebody comes up to me and reports something that like the entire rest of the management team is going to know that Lily got assaulted by, so things like that. It's also part of our protocol that we will make sure that they know that they have a right to call the police, and if they do that, we'll help them. Currently, the way that our communication works with like 911 dispatch and things like that, those kinds of calls have to come through Fair Central. And so we were a little bit concerned about adding that in here, like maybe we could change it to like you have a right to call law enforcement if you are a survivor of crime at fair, so on and so forth. In order to do that, please work with management or Whitebird, or something like that, because if they call just from, they're not going to have the same reaction or same response from 911 or calling the police station that they would under normal circumstances. Does that make any sense?
That makes sense to me. Sense to me. I wonder though if her, I can't tell you everything she was thinking in crafting it this way.
Lisa?
I had the same exact concern as Crystalline about the languaging of this. I really want people to know that they have that right.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, but it's how that's done that I think the way this is languaged, it almost makes it seem like you just call 911
Yeah.
from the fair site, and so that could be confusing to somebody that wants to report.
Like if you dial 911 on a Tinkerbell, you get Fair Central. You know what I mean? Like people, and people don't always know that, so.
Brad and Spirit.
That's the main issue, is just how to finesse that encouragement of involving outside law enforcement if the person desires, without having it seem like it's their responsibility to pick up the phone and call 911. Just finessing that, that's the main piece that needs to get worked out.
Spirit, and then John, and then Diane, and then me.
I also don't want to encourage necessarily, I don't want to not encourage contacting authorities, but I think that maybe that comes with better, maybe not better, but more information to whether it's security, if they come to us. We would call a bum into that, and you guys know how to do that. So we just need to get that out to the fair family, but calling 911 actually prolongs everything, you know, when we're out at the fair, so.
John?
This is just a process question. I mean, these guidelines were turned in December 31st. I wish that a guideline like this had gotten reviewed by the folks who deal with these issues, and language could have been brought back rather than us trying to figure out the language, because I agree with the comments that have been made, but we're trying to solve it here tonight, and I just hope in the future we can at least try to have a slightly different process. I don't know if we can approve this kind of change in principle and have the exact language kind of worked out by management, because, you know, and very minor. The third line to the last of that, the maybe there should be 2 words instead of 1. This is a different maybe, not maybe. That's minor, but just thought
I'll make sure that edit gets to Erin.
Diane?
Well, if you change it to, if you want to exercise your right to call law enforcement, et cetera, fair management will assist you in doing so. I don't know if that's, just trying to avoid that extra call that people have.
So for those of you who've been following along at home, I almost never recognize myself, but this is an issue that's very close to me. This is the work that I do in the real world, is adjudicating sexual misconduct claims. And so so the things that are being brought up here from a victim's rights perspective are really important to me. And I think that it's really important that that transparency about what someone can expect if they report is a part of the guideline that they read, and that be really clear and concise. I really like John's idea that maybe the board could direct management to work with the person who crafted this guideline to kind of come up with something like it, but not exactly it, that fits with current practices and procedures, rather than approving this language, and then allow that, whatever comes out of that process, to be the guideline. I don't know if that's possible or not, but that's what I'd love to see. Stephanie?
Well, that's almost exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say we could go back to the person who put in this guideline change. We did discuss this at our BOD meeting, so the people who are involved in this did look at it, and this was in your January board packet, so you yourselves have had a month with it also to follow up on anything you felt needed to be followed up on. But we would happily go back to Erin and work with her. I don't know how the language would go in a motion though, to work on.
Can I make a motion for management and the crafter of this guidelines change to work together to create a more thorough victim consent policy based on the legal implications of victims' rights?
You can make that motion, and then
Because she made the first motion, she can do that, right?
you can amend your motion, and if your second, actually Peaches made the motion, I think, and then.
Peaches made the motion for a guideline change.
So the guideline change.
I was asking if I could make another motion
Right.
to create a consent policy, a more robust consent policy.
What you can do is you can ask Peaches if she
I
will.
withdraw the motion.
Well, or to change the motion to be that, and then if you agree to it, then we're talking about that new amended motion. We don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of everything again.
And then that's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
we need to change look at the consent policy, manager.
So you want me to say it again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. To have management work with Aaron and possibly another victims' rights lawyer to create a more robust consent policy that really sheds light on the victims' rights okay.
Is that
Okay.
to go on the guidelines though? No.
Oh, and out of that meeting will come a guideline.
Okay.
Consent policy will become a guideline.
It seems like some of
Hold
the.
on, because there's a stack, sorry.
Sorry.
You're on the stack, but there is a stack.
You're making a
Jack?
friendly amendment, we should come up.
You got a phone. Okay. You're somewhere in the fair, and you're assaulted. I'm having a hard time with this picture that, are we somehow saying that they can't help themselves?
That's our policy.
We already have that.
I get that. I get that. And that's what we're saying. And now, we're bringing it out. And so, yeah, we need to do exactly what Willie says, but that's what we're saying?
This is, I think,
No.
yeah, we have to look at that policy.
So right now I've got Katie, Laurel, Spirit, and Brad, in that order.
Okay, so it seems like the confusion here is the facilitation of getting an emergency response if they want one. Sometimes when you're trying to deal with that sort of logistical confusion about what to do, the best thing to do is to tell people what to do. So just flat out say it. To facilitate emergency response, please contact Security Bum, Whitebird, or Fair Central. Just tell them what to do.
Yes.
Just flat out say it.
Yes.
And then that's what it is. Instead of trying to dance around it and tell them that it's their right to do it, just tell them that the easiest way to facilitate it, this is it.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Laurel.
I am close with someone who works in emergency call taking for Lane County, which Vanita is in. If they receive a 911 call from the fair property, tell them to go to Fair Central, Whitebird, or the nearest way to get them to Fair Central or Whitebird, because that's the easiest way to get resources to the 911 caller. So I think that exactly what Katie said, to let people know that to get to 911 resources from the fair site, the easiest way to do it is the list that Katie just gave. I think that is a clear way to provide resources to victims. It's not telling people not to call 911, it's telling people how 911 will get the resources to them, which is through these avenues.
That's our call.
Spirit?
I am right in line with Katie, that's what I was gonna say, but all the words are, trying to think of where, because I think it might need to be an amendment, but we don't want to not encourage them, but we don't want to encourage them because it does take longer. So instead of just saying, I think in here it says contact management, but I think it should say security or information or Fair Central, and give that list, because a lot of people don't know how to get a direct line to management. So I think it's expanding that, and then I think we also need to look at the consent policy. We need to do this and that. So
I got Brad, John, and Lisa, and a reminder that the motion currently on the table is to direct management to work with
Aaron Pettigrew.
And possibly others to revise this, rather than any specific language.
it's like Laurel was a
Brad?
creator.
I'll pass.
John? That was you, John.
Yeah, I just want to, I know this is specific language, but I just thought, if you say something like, while you have a right to call law enforcement or survivor, you will get a quicker response because the fair has protocols in place with local law enforcement. There will be a quicker response if you go to fair management, yada, yada, yada. I think the author of this wants to make sure that people are aware they have a right to do it on their own. And I think what we're saying is you'll get a quicker response if you go through the fair.
Exactly.
I'm reading that the crafter of this suggestion is really concerned that people know that they have the right. That is the emphasis, and that is why they wanted this put in there. And I think that speaks a lot to where it was placed in this text, in this suggested guideline. So I think that if we have this motion to have management work with this person, the goals can be met where anybody reading this section will be aware that they have the right to report to authorities, and they will know how to make that happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hell, I'm gonna recognize myself one more time. Nobody else is on the staff right now. And just to say, and then it'll be Jack and we'll go to a vote. But just to say that, this is not speaking about any current situation, but you never know what's gonna happen. And it may be that there's a really good reason for someone who's experienced a trauma not to want to go through Whitebird or management or info, because there's a reason for that. And so that's just something to keep in mind.
Aaron actually expressed that exact concern to me.
That's not going to be a situation that's common. Hopefully it never happens, but if it does, you want to be clear about that. Okay, Jack.
But from what I just heard, it doesn't matter. So why, if you call 911, then the information comes to us because they know they can't get in. It's easier to get in if they work through us. So
they're going to get routed right
yeah,
back.
so why would we discourage that? I mean, I'm just viewing this as, you got a phone, you're somewhere at the fair, maybe under the influence, maybe not. What I mean by under the influence, I mean being influenced in some way that you're not readily accessible to get to management, okay? And it gets routed back to us anyway. What are we doing?
It's
Just discouraging people from calling 911 when it comes back to us anyway?
Right, and that was my question too, is if they call 911 and then the dispatcher refers them back to Fair Central or Whitebird or security or something like that, they're talking to a live person, right? So they could say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk to them or something like that. There's still avenue, I don't know.
Spirit and then Crystal?
I was going to say that perhaps, since we don't want to discourage from contacting authorities and the wording can look like that maybe we need to provide information, other sources like our Peach Pit and our Fair Family News or wherever we can, that during fair to contact 911 oftentimes, well, you'll get rerouted, just give the information of what happens. And so to contact 911, it's best to contact Fair Central, management, security, or info. Something to that effect. I don't know the exact wording right now, but get the correct information out there.
Crystal?
I was just gonna say, another thing that has happened in the past is when somebody calls like the sheriff's office directly, and then we'll get a sheriff show up at the gates that says, I need to talk to Joe. I'm serious, it's happened. Brad, I wasn't on the, but I've heard, I need to talk to Joe, Joe called me. Anyway, so I hope that you guys just let us work it out.
Yeah,
let's just do that.
Lily?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say was, the motion that I proposed was not that we solve it tonight, not that we figure out wording, but just that we encourage a group of people to work on this problem so that it gets solved.
And with that, let's bring it to a vote. All those in favor?
Right, and it doesn't have to go back to the board. That's going to become a guideline.
That's the motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. With John voting in place.
But that's okay.
Okay, we have one more. This one was brought to us by Crystalline. Would you like to kind of clarify the rewording of the sound ordinance thing?
So some of the feedback that we received from both the city of Veneta and Jay Bozovich was that our guidelines were literally saying that we could break the law. around amplified sound. So this essentially changes it, that just says will comply. And, you know, the law is basically that it won't be above a certain decimal level at the property line after a certain hour.
Which we're compliant.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
compliant.
Which we
Yeah.
are currently.
We are
Yeah.
compliant,
Yeah.
yes.
We're just cleaning up.
Okay.
Ish.
I'll second that motion if it's a motion.
Well, I-
Or I'll make
I
a
heard
motion.
Keith is making a motion, and I hear Paxton seconding it. Is there discussion about this motion? John? And then Palmer.
This is my I told you so moment. I was the only board member to vote against this guideline change because I said it was explicitly putting things in there that were contrary to the county ordinance. The part of the problem with complying, having this just be linked to the county ordinance is, as I understand it this last year, whereas we could be meeting the terms of the county ordinance at our property line, because the way sound travels, that we were having people from, I don't know how far away, but several miles away from the fair, hearing the sound that we were producing. Even though it might have met the decibel levels at our property line, it was louder the further away you got. And so this doesn't deal with one of the issues that I think we need to deal with, is are we going to allow to have music to 3 a.m.? And I still do not think we should, even if it meets the sound guidelines at the property line. I still don't think we should have that, we should do it, because it can extend. And how are we going to, we're going to wait till we get complaints and then shut the music down? I think we need to be in a prevention mode here. I also don't think this change deals with the internal fair issues that we continue to have around our sound policy. I don't think this guideline change is intended to deal with that, but I still think we will need to deal with that at some point. And I guess taking this language out, what is someone going to expect? Those people who got sound permits to go to 3 a.m. next year, are they going to be expected to get them to 3 a.m. this year? So I'm not really sure how this, I know this change in terms of not flouting, violating the county ordinance is going to be there. On a practical level, is this going to change the way that we give out sound permits at the fair and at all? And I'm just curious.
Why wouldn't it?
Paxton?
As the one who made the motion last time to run it to 3 a.m., I want to say I think I was wrong. And that was because of listening to last year's noise that we generated. And I understand why people miles away heard us last year. It was poor placement and lack of controls of our own monitoring, sounds of how much we make. And that I'm beginning to think we do need a crew or somebody that's trained to monitor the actual noise that we generate at the music at the fair. I think this is a good change. I think it showed the county commission meeting I attended the other day brought up many of the concerns in sound, and this is the one way I feel that we can actually comply with what the county wants.
Heather?
So at that county commissioners meeting, which was about trying to impose new rules on campgrounds around, and it should have been also within, the Oregon Country Fair, sound and traffic were the two major items. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the neighborhood campgrounds outside the fair will now be strictly and severely self-monitoring and monitoring each other. So it's not going to be
unless that doesn't work, which I'll be very surprised, unless that doesn't work, it will no longer be possible to try to point fingers at the campgrounds around the fair in terms of being the generators of the noise that are being heard in Veneta and on Evers Road and down Subtle Road. So whatever you do inside the fair, whether you make it so that people can sleep inside the fair or not, be ready to make real changes, at least to the sound going off of the fair site.
Peaches?
So I get a meeting. This guideline that was made to end at 3 a.m. What is the county ordinance about 10 p.m.?
10, but you can get a variance to that, that'll let you go to 11.
I thought you were gonna say 3.
No.
Okay.
But it has to do with the property line, not the property.
Right, it's actually 70
Right.
dB at the property
So
line.
there is a separate discussion that needs to happen about our internal policy and what we do within. That's a separate discussion from changing the language here. Is that correct? Yeah.
It's well communicated through the
Yeah.
sound permit policy.
So, I've got,
Sam, I have an important piece of information about the code, if she wants it.
Yes,
okay.
It's not just about the property line, it's also about noise-sensitive units. And noise-sensitive units are things that people are trying to sleep inside. So, as somebody said up there, you could be in compliance at the property line and not in compliance where it's bouncing off of the hill that somebody lives on. So it's not just about the property line, it's also about people inside noise-sensitive units. It's a very short provision, and I can refer you to the actual code if you want.
okay, Crystal and Snacks.
I was gonna say that we are gonna be working with the city of Veneta so that we can address concerns immediately, both pre-fair and post-fair and during the event. It's really challenging to hear like about the concerns where like, well, we could hear it, you know, over by our daily bread or, you know, things like that. Well, which night was it? Sometime in June. You know what I mean? Like I have no idea. So we are going to be working with the city of Veneta to identify various different neighbors in the community that are willing to call us in the moment. If we do, you know, like it's 9:30 and I can hear it from my house kind of thing, so that we can immediately address the problem. There are some people who got sound permits last year that we asked to turn down and instead they turned it up. I'm thinking of one in particular, and they will not get a sound permit this year. Because we knew it was a problem, we knew we could hear it on our property line, and when we asked them to turn it down, they just turned it way up. So you don't get to have a party anymore.
Dean?
Pat Planning's been talking about sound corridors for years. I think we even have maps and locations throughout the fair where you can look at what sound corridors we've identified as areas that you can safely generate loud sound. But I'm kind of thinking that if we're going to try to go beyond what Lane County's laws are, then we need to have very tight control over the kind of sound that we're generating. You can have a speaker that is generating 70 dB of sound and one speaker that does that, and it's going to carry a long ways. But if you have a bunch of smaller speakers that are all surrounding a location, pointing towards each other, they're going to cancel those sounds out. So perhaps what we might want to consider is if we're going to create sound permits that are going to go till 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, that we bring in the people that manage that sound, that put the speakers in place, that control the volume. Otherwise, when they're told to turn the sound down, they turn it up. This way, it's our team that's controlling the volume and where that sound goes. I mean, I don't know, otherwise we're gonna, this is a big deal for the fair. I'm sorry. This is a big deal for the fair.
Actually, you need to stop.
We could lose everything.
Thank you.
Call the vote.
Peaches, and then we'll vote.
Yeah, I am just trying to clarify that we're essentially, as, maybe I could add something to the motion. That our language in the guideline keeps us from looking illegal as far as we're not following the ordinances. And that management will continue to work with the membership to come up with, to clarify our sound, our internal sound guidelines.
That's already in the guidelines.
There you go. So this, I just, this isn't gonna nullify all of the things, all the work that's gone into it over the years up until now, that this is just gonna bring us on paper into, we're complying, and that, there will be some clarification about sound permits, within the fair.
So I'm hearing that's maybe already in the guidelines.
Yeah,
it's already in the
okay,
guidelines.
well then there you go.
Do that at this point, and that said,
And call the question.
all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in favor, none opposed. John Silvermoon voting as an alternate. Okay, so I'm gonna make you guys, Martha told me I could do this, so I'm gonna do it. If you wanna go another half an hour to finish the rest of this business, you can take a vote to extend the meeting by half an hour, otherwise we're gonna go to the president's piece and adjourn. So, all those in favor of extending the meeting by a half an hour?
Well, no, wait.
That's true, I can. Does anyone want to move to extend the meeting by a half an hour? John?
No, all I want to do at this point is distribute this and get the wording to the motion in the minutes. I thought we should have acted on it tonight. I think there's going to be some discussion. I'm not sure a half hour is going to be sufficient with the discussion. So, for the Personnel Policy Committee, so if it's all right, I will distribute what I had tonight. And the only word that would change is March to April, since 2 months it's been put into April. And that way the motion, and you can table this and it'll be in the meeting next month. And I'm fine for tabling the next item. And yeah, member input. I will also put in the minutes the motion as I was going to make it tonight. And then, obviously, we don't have time for conversation, and that would put us at the president's piece.
Okay, well, there you go.
And I also have sort of a amended motion to John's that I'll be distributing. So there can be two versions of addressing the same topic.
So, if you want, we can maybe discuss each other between now and the...
Aaron?
Sure. Instead of pass these out right now?
I'd like to just make a comment about the member input and all committee business. No, you were just saying you would like to collaborate. I did offer to collaborate with John on the motion that he's sending out about committee.
And you never replied to the email that I sent out that with my draft motion.
Actually, I did reply and everybody else got it, so you must have gotten it. Your draft motion came out 2.5 weeks after the meeting. I asked you the day after the meeting if you'd like to collaborate so that we wouldn't have these two motions. So if you like, I'm willing to still collaborate this month.
So,
Grab president's piece.
I think, what we're trying to deal with here is somehow or another create a safe space. And I think that's a really good thing. And actually, it's not just a good thing, it's something that we have to really agree to. Discussions tonight, one about reporting for a victim, and other one very clearly about insensitivity, or how we deal with it. Making sure that we feel safe with each other. And what happens if we don't pursue that to the highest level, then the sensitive ones drop off. I mean, that's real, and we don't know that. I mean, that's a little spooky to me. We're having these conversations about consequences and stuff like that, and people are dropping off because they're not feeling safe. So, we need to work on that environment. We need to work on it so that we're not losing anybody by almost protecting the status quo. We need to be real careful about it. And with that, at our 50th, it would be a really good time to make a real goal for the next 50 years that, the people that we might be losing to kind of protect who we think we are might be our future. So I think this 50th is really appropriate for us to do some re-examining on what we think is okay. So, happy 50th.
What are you doing?